Ride the Exponential. Find opportunity in accelerating change. Introduction: the thrill of disruption. I work in venture capital, which, as I often joke, is a great career choice for people with short attention spans. My firm, Future Ventures, and before that, Draper Fisher Jurvetson, DFJ, for over 2 decades, focuses on investing in startup companies, often at their very earliest stages, when they are little more than a gleam in the eye of a founder. We look specifically for those founder-led, mission-driven companies tackling challenges at the cutting edge of disruptive technology and new industry formation. It's a role that allows us to surf the frontiers of the unknown, living vicariously through the successes of bold entrepreneurs, scientists, and engineers as they forge the future time and time again. This book is a collection of observations, patterns, predictions, and reflections gathered over roughly 25 years navigating these frontiers. It's built from essays, talks, and interviews given during that time, compiled and categorized with help from Kevin G. and Brett Cuprell, providing a sort of sedimentary record of evolving thoughts on technology and innovation, while the context shifts from the dawn of the commercial internet to the rise of nanotechnology, cleantech, synthetic biology, and now the AI revolution. Certain core themes persist. My own path to this vantage point wasn't exactly linear. I started as a computer programming hobbyist back at St. Mark's in Texas, became a chip designer at Hewlett-Packard, where 7 of my designs were fabricated, detoured through management consulting at Bain & Company, did stints in product marketing at Apple and Next, and finally landed in venture capital just as the internet wave was truly building in 1995. It might look, as I once described it, like a career path with ADD. But this breadth of experience from hands-on engineering to strategic analysis proved invaluable. Had I stopped at any earlier branch, I might never have found this particular calling, the chance to partner with visionaries tackling truly audacious goals, aiming not just to build a business, but to change the world. Investing in the early dreams of companies like SpaceX, Tesla, Planet, Hotmail, D-Wave, and Mythic has been an incredible privilege. What ties these disparate investments together? A belief in the power of disruption, fueled by the relentless engine of accelerating technological change. This is perhaps the most crucial pattern, the mother of all trends, as I sometimes call it, epitomized by Moore's Law, but extending far beyond just semiconductors. When you abstract Moore's Law from mere transistor counts to the fundamental cost performance of computation or data storage, you see an exponential curve stretching back over a century, progressing steadily through world wars and economic depressions. This compounding progress isn't confined to IT. As lab sciences increasingly become information sciences driven by simulation and data analysis, Moore's Law begins to innervate fields from biology and medicine to materials science and energy. This nonlinear pace of technological progress is a juggernaut of perpetual market disruption. It constantly creates waves of opportunity, primarily for new entrants. Why? Because established companies, comfortable with linear progress and burdened by legacy systems, partners, and mindsets, often struggle to adapt to exponential shifts. Startups, unburdened and agile, possess an almost unfair competitive advantage in leveraging these disruptions. They can pivot quickly, embrace radically new business models like the viral marketing that propelled Hotmail from 0 users to global dominance with virtually no marketing budget, and exploit new distribution channels like the internet without fear of cannibalizing existing structures. Without disruption, entrepreneurs and early-stage venture capitalists like myself simply wouldn't exist. Stability favors the incumbents. Recognizing this dynamic shapes our entire investment philosophy. We actively seek out those crazy ideas that most people dismiss or ridicule, because history shows that the companies which truly change the world are rarely obvious winners at their inception. If everyone thinks an idea is good, it's likely not disruptive enough. We look for that asymmetry, widespread skepticism combined with passionate conviction from a small group, especially the founding team. Over the chapters that follow, based on those compiled writings and talks, we'll explore these themes across different technological epochs. We'll delve into the mechanics of the early internet revolution, Viral growth, the deconstruction of e-commerce, the unique advantages of web speed startups, and the expansion of the enterprise beyond its traditional walls. We'll then track the convergence of information technology with biology and nanotechnology, exploring the rise of molecular electronics, the new paradigms in clean tech fueled by synthetic biology, and the profound inspiration we can draw from nature's own complex systems. Finally, we'll look towards the current and future frontiers, the acceleration of change itself, the dichotomy between designed and evolved systems, especially relevant for AI, the rise of machine learning as a pervasive force, the commercialization of space, and the ongoing transformation of our interfaces with technology through autonomy and voice. Along the way, we'll touch on the mindset required to navigate these frontiers, the importance of passion, the value of cultivating a childlike mind driven by curiosity and play, and the ultimate quest for meaning and legacy. This isn't a crystal ball, and predicting the specifics of the future remains an exercise in humility. The pace of change itself makes long-range forecasting increasingly difficult, but by identifying the underlying patterns, understanding the drivers of disruption, and maintaining an optimistic yet critical lens on technological progress, perhaps we can better anticipate the currents shaping our world. We are living through an unprecedented era of innovation and intellectual renaissance, interwoven across the sciences, empowering individuals with good ideas as never before. My hope is that exploring these frontiers together might spark your own curiosity and inspire you to play a role in forging the future. Part 1, riding the first wave, the internet revolution, late 1990s to early 2000s. The dawn of the commercial internet wasn't just the arrival of a new technology. It felt like a fundamental reshaping of communication, commerce, and the very nature of business itself. In those early exhilarating days of the late 1990s and early 2000s, we witnessed firsthand how nimble startups could leverage the network's unique properties, its speed, its global reach, its inherent virality, to overturn established industries almost overnight. This first part delves into those foundational shifts that define the initial internet wave, how ideas began spreading like digital wildfires through novel strategies like viral marketing, epitomized by Hotmail's explosive growth, how the traditional models of retail began to look like anachronisms under pressure from eyeball bandits and new horizontal platforms that put the consumer first. Why startups, unburdened by legacy, possessed an almost unfair advantage operating at the unprecedented velocity of web speed, and how the definition of the enterprise itself began to expand beyond its physical firewalls, fueled by powerful new communication tools and the nascent expertise economy. It was our first real taste of just how profoundly the network could disrupt the status quo. Chapter 1, the viral engine, how ideas spread on the network. Back in 1998, Iconocast declared viral marketing the internet marketing buzzword of the year. While the term itself may have spread like a meme, the underlying phenomenon it described was already reshaping the digital landscape at incredible speed. A lot of the energy behind the early internet stemmed from its unique ability for everyone to be a publisher, but this democratization of voice created a new scarcity: people's attention. Attention is finite. Consequently, we found ourselves in a land grab for this precious spectrum. Rising above the noise of 1,000, then 1,000,000 voices requires creativity. Shouting isn't very creative. Just hanging up a web shingle and hoping for visitors isn't very creative either. What was creative, what was disruptive, was structuring new businesses in a way that allowed them to grow like a virus, exploiting the very nature of the network to bypass traditional barriers and lock out competitors burdened by legacy systems. For us at Draper Fisher Jurvetson, the canonical case study, the phenomenon that sparked our thinking and led us to coin the term viral marketing was Hotmail. It's a story worth recounting because it exemplifies the power of this new distribution model. In 1996, Sabir Bhatia and Jack Smith came to us with an idea. Initially, they weren't pitching free email. They approached us as JavaSoft Inc., a web database tools company. As Businessweek later recounted, Sabir and Jack went to see Draper, Fisher, Jurvetson, but the investor was unimpressed by their idea for database software for the net. As they were packing up to leave, we asked, "Do you have any other ideas?" Sabir said they'd noodled over a scheme to offer free advertising-supported email over the web. A week and a half later, the venture capitalists ponied up $300,000 and Hotmail was born. Even then, the idea of free web-based email was novel, pioneering a great new product category. But many great ideas and great products have withered on the vine. The special catalyst for Hotmail's torrid growth wasn't just the product itself, but a specific suggestion from my partner, Tim Draper. In our next meeting, Tim suggested they append an advertising message to every outbound email, "P.S. Get your free email at Hotmail." It was very contentious at the time. Would users balk at having this automatic addition to the content of their private messages? Hotmail tempered the idea by clearly demarcating the promotional plug and removing the PS. Nevertheless, every outbound message still conveyed an advertisement and, crucially, a subtle implied endorsement by the sender. The recipient knew that the sender was a Hotmail user and that this new free email thing seemed to work for them. This was the essence of viral marketing. Each new user becomes an involuntary company salesperson simply by using the product. The message spreads organically through word-of-mouth networks, but network enhanced. Customers do the selling. And the results were astounding. Hotmail grew a subscriber base more rapidly than any company in the history of the world, faster than any new online, internet, or print publication ever. In its first 1.5 years, Hotmail signed up over 12 million subscribers. Contrast that with a traditional print publication hoping to reach maybe 100,000 subscribers within several years of launch. Hotmail was signing up more than 150,000 subscribers every day, 7 days a week. Later updates put the number well over 30 million, then 60 million, eventually reaching a point where roughly 1 out of every 4 people on the web worldwide had an account. What's more, this explosive growth was achieved with startling efficiency. From company launch to 12 million users, Hotmail spent less than $500,000 on marketing, advertising, and promotion, barely enough for some college newspaper ads and a billboard. This compared to over $20 million spent on traditional advertising and brand promotion by Juno, Hotmail's closest competitor, who achieved only a fraction of the users. Hotmail's business model mapped well to the medium. Juno's did not, and they paid the price. It demonstrated powerfully that it's hard to spend your way to Hotmail-like growth. The Hotmail adoption pattern was precisely that of a virus, exhibiting both spatial and network locality. People typically send emails to their associates and friends. Many of them are geographically close, while others are scattered but often clustered in areas of high internet connectivity, like university towns or specific countries. We would notice the first user pop up in, say, Sweden or India, and then the number of subscribers from that region would rapidly proliferate. Oh, the beauty of it was that none of this required any marketing dollars. Digital viruses, we realize, can spread internationally far more rapidly than biological viruses that rely on physical proximity. Hotmail became the largest email provider in Sweden and India, despite the fact that they had done no marketing of any sort in these countries. It's a happy day when you discover your business has displaced several entrenched competitors to become the market share leader in a country you have never visited. At one point, Hotmail was used in over 220 countries, despite being available only in English. So what exactly is this viral engine? Viral marketing captures the essence of multi-level marketing, but applies it automatically to all customers. The word-of-mouth spread is involuntary, tied to the act of communication itself, and as we saw, it's more powerful than many other marketing techniques because it carries that implied endorsement from a friend. Hotmail had free email buttons on several other highly trafficked websites, but they generated comparatively negligible numbers of subscriptions compared to the messages sent between users. How can we model this? A simple first-order model for viral spread might look like this. Cumulative users equals 1 plus fan out to the power of cycles. Here, Fan out represents the average number of new users recruited by each existing user per cycle, and cycles represents the frequency of use over time, frequency times time. In the early days, Hotmail and its contemporary, ICQ, seemed to fan out to about 2 new users every month. Those users each told 2 friends and so on. So 1 seed user grew to 3 users after the first cycle, 9 by the second, 27 by the third, a classic exponential curve. To refine this, we can factor in the success rate of the recruiting message and the user retention rate. Cumulative users equals open parenthesis 1 plus fan out times conversion rate, close parenthesis times retention rate, close parenthesis to the power of open parenthesis frequency times time, close parenthesis. The ideal viral product, therefore, is used frequently to communicate with many people, converts a high percentage of recipients into new users, and retains a high percentage of those users over time. Of course, a more accurate second-order model would include decay functions reflecting novelty and saturation effects. As Hotmail reached population saturation, its growth variables inevitably tapered. Hotmail wasn't an isolated incident. We saw a similar viral communications approach taken by Mirabilis with its ICQ instant messaging service. They signed up 12 million subscribers before their acquisition by AOL for almost $300 million. To use ICQ, both parties needed the client software. So each subscriber ended up emailing friends, soliciting them to engage in this new channel. The friends, in turn, experience the product firsthand and might repeat the pattern. It's like the old shampoo commercial refrain. They told 2 friends who told 2 friends, and so on. Powerful, but these dyadic, one-to-one or one-to-few communication products primarily recruited new customers individually. The model becomes even more interesting with viral broadcasts. Think of a sneeze releasing millions of particles. In the digital domain, companies like Tumbleweed Software, which enabled secure email delivery of documents to huge numbers of recipients, demonstrated this. Every recipient also got a web link to the enabling Tumbleweed service. When a single new customer started using Tumbleweed, thousands of potential new customers received the pitch simultaneously. This viral broadcast model could be applied creatively to web-hosted address books, calendars, list servers, and tools like Homestead, which enabled groups to create community websites and broadcast invitations to members. The dark side of this power was demonstrated by junk email chain letters, messages urging recipients to forward them, often shrouded with bogus virus warnings or charitable causes, spreading globally until people received multiple copies. These junk emails are like digital graffiti. The creators want their message seen by as many people as possible, much like businesses desire brand awareness. New businesses, however, want to achieve this without being annoying, meaning they must provide a compelling reason for customers to help spread the word. The balance between customer value and privacy concerns is always a delicate one. For many network applications, from ICQ to the traditional fax machine, the value of the network grows disproportionately as more people join Metcalfe's Law. A company offering a strong incentive for customers to share their contact lists opens up a powerful viral opportunity. A good virus looks for prolific hosts, like students, and ties into high-frequency social interactions, like email and messaging. Tapping the customer's entire address book, reaching their weaker connections, is often more valuable than just reaching their best friends. The typical viral entry strategy involves minimizing the friction of market entry and proliferation while building in hooks and switching barriers. If a service tries to blatantly monetize its user base too early or aggressively, new users will be reluctant to spread the word. That's why many of these services, like Hotmail and ICQ, started free and were light on revenue generation during their rapid growth phase. When we first invested in Hotmail, we brainstormed several potential monetization scenarios, but in the viral growth phase, simple banner ads seemed the most innocuous. Prior to their acquisition, ICQ's CEO even took delight in having no revenue and no current plan for revenue. This isn't to say businesses without revenue prospects are attractive, but that capturing eyeballs, people's attention, has proven monetizable in every medium eventually. A company that can delay revenue maximization might exploit a first mover advantage in the internet land grab to gain a dominant market position. This was one reason so much venture capital flowed into these startups. The internet is a wonderful substrate, a petri dish for the proliferation of intellectual property. A good idea can spread more quickly than ever before in the physical world, where manufacturing and distribution fundamentally limit adoption rates. Competitiveness in the internet era depends heavily on this velocity of thought and action, but rapid growth is valueless without customer retention. This is where building sticky applications becomes crucial. Web communities, email, personalization, contact lists, calendars, personal web pages. These applications help retain customers and build barriers to switching. Most of Yahoo's and other portals' energy in the late 90s went into acquiring or building these sticky features. That's why Yahoo bought 411 for its Rocket Mail service and Microsoft bought Hotmail. Hypergrowth presents its own challenges, primarily scalability, both technologically, server capacity, and organizationally hiring good people. Hotmail pioneered the software as a service model, offering email through a standard browser, making upgrades seamless for millions of users. But the human bottleneck remained. Many companies tried to engineer around people-intensive elements. An interesting side effect of geometric growth relates to competitive dynamics. Hotmail took several months to reach 1 million users, flying under the radar. By the time the industry realized free web-based email was a hot idea, Hotmail was adding 1 million new subscribers per month and accelerating. A fast follower, starting small, would take months to reach 1 million, by which time Hotmail might have 10 million. The absolute difference in subscriber bases widens dramatically, even if the relative growth rates are similar. Absolute size matters for economies of scale, making Hotmail the lowest cost provider, and for attracting partnerships. This often skewed the build via buy decision toward buy for large portals, wanting a proven, scalable solution. Viral marketing also represents a new distribution channel. New companies often benefit most from new channels, like Dell using direct mail to surpass Compaq, whose legacy channel partners prevented it from easily adopting the lower cost model. The internet is a still lower cost channel. By offering free products or drastically lower prices, a new entrant can employ a market shrink strategy, making it painful for incumbents with established distribution relationships to follow. There might be less revenue in a free email market, but it was tough for companies selling traditional client software like Eudora to follow Hotmail's lead. We saw potential for applying viral marketing even to traditional standalone software. Imagine embedding an e-commerce engine for electronic distribution and try before you buy purchasing. A company like Release Software could enable this. When a customer gives the application to a friend, it triggers an embedded sales agent offering a trial period. Instead of piracy, you have a sales opportunity. Taking it further, the customer could be treated like a distribution partner, earning a small commission on sales to friends and their friends' friends. A self-organizing viral distribution network. Established companies were unlikely to experiment with this due to channel conflict. Where might this all lead? We were still, and perhaps still are, looking for the emergent intelligence of the hive, akin to an ant colony exhibiting intelligence beyond its individual members. If we are the neurons on the net, the network applications leveraging that collective intelligence are still evolving. Computer viruses were considered by some at the Santa Fe Institute as a form of artificial life. Perhaps viral marketing could also find an evolutionary form. In the meantime, back then, the Hotmail juggernaut just kept growing quietly, consistently on its own momentum. As a technological dislocation, the internet provided an unfair competitive advantage to nimble startups. A good idea could spread like wildfire if its business model mapped to the medium. Viral marketing simply added fuel to that fire. It was, and remains, a powerful engine for growth on the network. Chapter 2, Deconstructing E-commerce Beyond the Retail Metaphor. The first approaches in any new medium tend to mimic what is already well understood in prior media. Marshall McLuhan first articulated this idea back in the 1960s, and it has played out with remarkable accuracy ever since. Early movies were essentially filmed theater, capturing a stage performance from a single audience perspective. Early television shows were often just televised radio programs. People start with what they understand, and the unique expressions native to the new medium take time to emerge. The internet grew much more quickly than preceding media, but in the late 1990s, it hadn't yet fully matured out of this imitative phase. Millions were using the web while it was still, metaphorically speaking, in its filmed theater stage. Untargeted banner ads functioning like subway billboards were simplistic and becoming increasingly ineffective. We had yet to see the widespread adoption of business models uniquely derived from the internet medium itself, models that simply wouldn't have been feasible in the physical world. So, what did we have in early e-commerce? One of the first metaphors attempted was the online shopping mall. MCI and several now defunct startups built virtual malls where consumers would navigate rows of retailers, sometimes even viewing products in 3D renderings on virtual shelves. These online malls largely failed, partly because they ignored the internet's fundamental power to collapse geographical distance. Aggregating commerce sites under one electronic roof felt unnecessary when users could teleport anywhere with a few keystrokes. The next, more successful physical world model transplanted online was the vertically integrated retailer. A single vendor like Amazon.com that handled the entire shopping experience, from product selection and merchandising through payment and shipment. These online retailers certainly scaled up much faster than traditional shops constrained by physical geography, but they still didn't represent the truly transformative leap the internet enabled. I argued then, and believe even more strongly now, that the very concept of a retail brand, as we understood it, is an anachronism online. The vertically integrated electronic retailer is a holdover from the physical world, fundamentally out of place in the networked environment. The internet gives consumers power over retailers for the first time, setting the stage for a dramatic shift in the e-commerce landscape. Retailers would cease to be the central force and the bottleneck they had always been. Over the next few years, we began to see merchandising and product selection decouple from product fulfillment and support. In the late 90s, they were often smashed together out of habit, mirroring our physical world experience. Browse the shelves, ask a clerk for advice, pick a product, pay and take delivery, all from the same store. This physical integration was cumbersome to break apart. Who would shuttle across town for each distinct step in the buying chain? The physical retail store was orchestrated to maximize the efficiencies of the physical supply chain. The logistics of moving goods from production to the consumer engaged only at the final step, facing a binary choice among a fixed set of options at fixed prices. Power rested with the store, its model defined by geographic constraints, largely unchanged for hundreds of years. But vertical integration is rarely optimal for consumers. Let's say you wanted to decide which DVD player to buy. Would you inherently trust the advice of a company whose primary goal is to sell you a DVD player? Probably not. If you looked at Amazon.com's own reviews for CDs or books back then, you'd notice almost everything received between 4 and 5 stars. Very few products were poorly rated. From the retailer's perspective, everything is a great product. Over time, consumers naturally start distrusting retailers' potentially biased ratings. What if the alternative was a dedicated shopping agent service, perhaps with a brand built on objectivity like Consumer Reports, having no economic incentive to sway you, an agent that could give you honest feedback, learn your tastes across the entire web, not just within one store's walled garden? This was the emerging opportunity. Any single merchant only knows what you've done on their site. But new types of companies were emerging, what I started calling the eyeball bandits, that could stay with you as you surfed the web. These persistent agents could potentially make personalized recommendations based on your entire buying history, pan-web. This demand for both objectivity and pan-web personalization created space for separate companies focusing exclusively on product selection and reviews. They could innovate in consumer feedback networks, collaborative shopping, and even buyer aggregation. Imagine ad hoc groups forming with massive purchasing power. Simultaneously, other companies could innovate purely on logistics and support, deploying vans and warehouses for same-day delivery, differentiating themselves solely on service and customer support. When a vertically integrated industry breaks apart, innovation accelerates rapidly within each horizontal layer, just as we saw in the computer industry when IBM ceased to be the one-stop shop. An ecosystem of specialized competitors moves faster and adapts better than a large retail bureaucracy. We also saw product merchandising, promotion, and even support migrating away from the retailer and back towards the product manufacturers. At DFJ, we saw this beginning with portfolio companies like Kana Communications and Digital Impact, which facilitated direct email interaction between companies and their end customers. Even large product-based corporations like Estee Lauder or General Motors, historically shielded from direct customer interaction by their retail channels, suddenly had to start talking to customers daily when their websites went live and emails poured in. The web allowed the pent-up demand for basic product knowledge to flow directly back to the product companies. In this emerging horizontal model, traditional retail brands built on physical location and shelf space, think Walmart or Toys R Us, seemed destined to fade online. Their physical world strengths didn't necessarily translate to excellence in rapid fulfillment or online customer support. New brands would arise, the trusted personal shopping agents built on objectivity and personalization alongside the enduring product brands like Tide. So how were these horizontal players gaining leverage? The technical underpinnings could be traced to the browser's transformation into a development platform. Entrepreneurs were enhancing the browser, making it far richer than just a window onto static web pages. The browser was finally becoming an application, enabling innovative forms of commerce, community, and communication layered on top of the existing web. These new companies had something crucial in common: persistent presence. They didn't lose contact with the consumer as they clicked from site to site. This persistence made it easier than ever before to poach customers. Consider NetZero, one of our early investments. In exchange for free internet access, NetZero kept a small banner ad on your screen whenever you were online. Crucially, NetZero knew your location on the web at all times. Its ads were closer to the user's eyes in the information stack, giving it downward visibility on the content and commerce context below. Amazon, by contrast, only knew what happened on its site. It lost all visibility when the consumer browsed elsewhere. This persistent presence enabled radically new offers like real-time pre-purchase competitive targeting. Imagine Catalina Marketing's offline strategy offering a Pepsi coupon at checkout if you bought Coke, but applied dynamically online. How much would buybooks.com pay to flash its ad right on the Amazon.com order page? Imagine this scenario. You add a John Grisham novel to your Amazon shopping cart. Instantly, a poaching banner pops up from your NetZero client. Amazon wants $35 for that novel? Click here for a $22 one-click purchase from buybooks.com. This was possible because the persistent client company knew who you were and, through the browser, exactly what you were about to buy and the offered price. Why wouldn't you switch based on price? Jeff Bezos argued back then that consumers weren't very price sensitive in practice, but that felt like a legacy of physical world friction. When obtaining the lower price became equally easy, just a mouse click away, consumer preferences would inevitably shift. Retail brands would become less important, while back-end issues like fulfillment speed and customer service quality would rise in significance. These persistent customer agents, like NetZero or Brodia's online wallet, also created a compelling delivery vehicle for e-commerce promotions. The offline coupon and promotions business was huge, larger than advertising, but the web initially lacked a universal infrastructure for it. With persistent clients enabling targeted, Catalina-like competitive couponing just before purchase, it seemed clear that online promotions would eventually exceed online advertising in scale. Companies like Planet U and NetCentives were poised to benefit. Beyond commerce, the locus of communication and community was also going horizontal and pan-web. Instead of lingering in generic chat rooms, users could foster discussions overlaid on top of any web page. Community feels more meaningful when coupled to context. Third Voice, another company we backed, let users annotate any website with notes like Post-its readable by other Third Voice users. It worked across the entire web, putting community building directly into consumers' hands. Brodia's online wallet service perfectly exemplified this shift towards user-centric horizontal tools. By storing purchasing information, it offered true one-click shopping across all merchants, eliminating the dreaded forms from hell, asking for the same name, address, and credit card number repeatedly. But the wallet was more than just convenience. It could maintain purchase histories, receive targeted promotions, track incentive programs, and search for goods pan web. Critically, Brodia wasn't administered by the merchant. Merchants wouldn't share customer data with competitors. It was an agent working on your behalf everywhere you went, capable of understanding your needs far better than any single retailer could. This pattern of horizontal services getting closer to the user extended beyond the PC. Consider TiVo and replay networks. By virtue of storing your TV programming preferences, they sat closer to you, the consumer, than the TV networks did. They could potentially overlay ads right at the point of consumption in the set-top box at home, thereby abrogating the power of the traditional networks. The core theme was clear. The internet dissolves the physical retailer metaphor. The dramatic drop in communication costs enabled a radical disaggregation of the retail supply chain. The emerging paradigm was consumer-centric, with marketing, merchandising, and logistics aligning to provide personalized, unbiased information. The consumer, for the first time, could truly be king. In this new horizontal structure, value accrues from relationships and control over key interfaces, primarily the shopping agent interface to consumers and the interface back to the product manufacturers. The valuable assets became customer knowledge and access to brands. While Amazon.com, as a vertically integrated e-retailer, represented an anachronism from the physical world, it was by no means doomed. Shopping habits changed slowly. Amazon could and perhaps would adapt. It might gravitate towards dominating a horizontal layer like back-end product fulfillment, leveraging its enormous distribution centers. It might spin off its product catalog front end to compete more effectively with independent innovators. What seemed unlikely was stubbornly sticking to a vertical strategy as the horizontal pioneers, the eyeball bandits, began poaching customers right at the virtual checkout stand. The shift was underway. The power structure of online commerce was being fundamentally reshaped. Chapter 3, Business at Web Speed, the Startup Advantage. In the burgeoning internet economy of the late 1990s and early 2000s, a fundamental shift occurred. It became increasingly clear that startups held a distinct, almost unfair competitive advantage over their larger, established counterparts. This wasn't how things used to be. 5 years prior, incumbents were credible threats. We VCs used to worry about the giants. But the internet acted as a powerful disruptive force, a technological dislocation that time and again favored the new entrant. An existing business franchise, once a formidable asset, often became an albatross. Most of the economic wealth created on the internet has been generated by startups, not large corporations. The vast majority of the major internet brands and companies that defined the era simply did not exist 5 years before they rose to prominence. When we at DFJ funded a startup during this period, our primary competitive concern rarely, if ever, revolved around companies like Microsoft, IBM, Hewlett-Packard, or Sun Microsystems. And the much more worrisome threat came from other startups. For every good idea, an entire ecosystem of small, nimble competitors seemed to spring up almost contemporaneously. Why this dramatic inversion of the traditional competitive landscape? The answer lies largely in speed and agility. The internet fundamentally changed the tempo of business. Competitiveness began to depend critically on the velocity of thought and action. Startups possessed a dramatic ability to act and react, capable of changing business plans in a matter of days, sometimes hours. Consider DFJ's investment in Beyond News, initially a corporate push technology developer. When that business model proved a dead end, the company transformed itself into a developer of consumer shopping bots, changed its name to C2B Technologies, and was swiftly acquired by Inktomi in a lucrative deal. Recall the Hotmail story from the previous chapter? Founders Sabir Bhatia and Jack Smith initially pitched us on a database product under the name JavaSoft. And when we turned that down, they pivoted instantly to their free web-based email idea. We invested just enough to get it started, and 2 years later, Microsoft acquired them in a deal eventually worth over $1 billion in stock. This adaptability is core to the startup advantage. Contrast this with the physical world where the pace is inherently slower. Companies needed to build factories, manage inventory, and wait for customers to discover products in stores. This slower pace gave incumbents time to react, strategize, and respond to new entrants. But the internet acted as a substrate for intellectual property growth, allowing good ideas to spread more quickly than ever before, like wildfire. Ideas didn't require massive physical assets or huge capital bases to gain adoption. Historical advantages tied to corporate scale began dissolving. This led to what we called internet time compression. Consider the time it took various companies to reach $1 billion in market capitalization from their first product launch. Hewlett-Packard took roughly 47 years, Microsoft about 15 years, Yahoo around 2 years, and Net Zero an astonishing 9 months. When time itself becomes the competitive weapon, a small, nimble company can often outmaneuver a large, established one every time. Beyond speed, startups benefited from having no legacy baggage. They arrived with a remarkably open mind, unburdened by sacred cows. The internet allowed them to ask fundamentally new questions and propose business models unlike anything feasible in the physical world. Incumbent businesses, in contrast, often seemed wedded to their existing channels of distribution, their established partnerships, their payment mechanisms, and perhaps most inhibitingly, their internal politics and budgeting processes. They weren't structured to be first movers on radical new models. They simply had more to lose by making abrupt changes. The internet itself represented a powerful new direct distribution channel, and historically, new distribution channels tend to benefit new companies. Incumbents frequently face debilitating channel conflicts. Their existing business relationships with distributors, resellers, or a direct sales force often prevent them from embracing a new, potentially cannibalistic channel. The classic example is the PC industry. Dell Computer and Gateway, as new entrants, built massive businesses using a direct-to-consumer model, first via mail order and then the internet. Incumbents like Compaq Computer struggled to respond effectively. It was simply too painful for Compaq to risk embittering its sales force and angering its distributors by directly competing in the new channel. It was as if Compaq was destined to watch helplessly as Dell captured market share. Startups free from these conflicts could exploit the internet channel without hesitation. Startups also held an advantage in partnership dynamics. They typically did one thing and one thing only, allowing them to partner broadly and aggressively outside their core focus. A rich web of partnerships could accelerate a young company's market entry, build awareness, and create powerful ecosystem leverage. When a large company like Microsoft sought a partnership, however, the potential partner often faced uncertainty. Which division were they dealing with? Would information shared in one context be used against them by another Microsoft product group? The sheer complexity and potential for internal conflict within a large corporation made partnering riskier and more complicated. The internet, by dramatically collapsing the cost and latency of communication between business partners, made it far easier for companies to focus narrowly on their core value and partner for everything else. This facilitated much more specialized, focused business models, another advantage for the lean startup. The mantra, "the internet changes everything," became ubiquitous in Silicon Valley for good reason. Business became like a game of 3D chess, competitive, strategically rich, but with the added twist that any startup might suddenly redefine the plane of play. An established business could abruptly find itself with few pieces on the newly relevant board. We saw this happen repeatedly with the rise of the eyeball bandits layered on top of existing sites, the horizontal e-commerce enablers deconstructing vertical retailers, the aggregators unlocking the small business market, and the viral marketing phenomena we explored earlier. These weren't just surface changes. The very architecture of business applications was shifting. The transition from computation-centric client-server applications to communication-centric web-resident businesses was fundamental. Email wasn't just a tool, it became the primary channel for customer interaction for many businesses. Enterprise resource planning, ERP systems designed for internal departmental optimization were being challenged by extranet applications focused on intercompany communication and supply chain efficiency. Business boundaries, historically reinforced by the difficulty of wide area connectivity and proprietary systems, dissolved as the internet provided a lingua franca for business communication. Automation migrated from the desktop to the enterprise and then outward to the industry level via the web. This shift spawned a new generation of companies, the application service providers, ASPs. Entrepreneurs weren't starting software companies in the traditional sense anymore. They were developing web-based services accessed through a browser. These hosted applications allowed for continuous, invisible upgrades, access to real-time data, and easy deployment across corporate desktops and remote webtops anywhere in the world. Crucially, this model finally made sophisticated business automation accessible to the vast underserved market of small businesses previously unreachable by traditional enterprise sales models. Procurement, marketing, and sales force automation were suddenly within reach for companies that had long been islands unto themselves. In this rapidly shifting landscape, it became clear that the future wouldn't simply be an online version of business as usual. Auctions, dynamic pricing, multilingual trading exchanges, outsourced e-commerce, a whole host of innovations impossible in the physical world were restructuring markets. And as always happens with radical change, new companies, the startups, were best positioned to exploit the new paradigm. Like the consumer internet powerhouses that define the first wave, the winners in the next phase of the internet economy, whether B2C or B2B, were unlikely to be the giants of the previous century. The engines of innovation and value creation were firmly in the hands of the entrepreneurs. We were, and perhaps still are, only in the first inning of the internet revolution. Chapter 4, Expanding the Enterprise, Beyond the Firewall. Why did a new generation of enterprise software companies like Ariba, Kana, and Epiphany seem to explode onto the scene in the late 1990s and early 2000s, while established giants like Bayan, PeopleSoft, SAP, and Siebel Systems appeared frozen in the client-server era? Why did these newcomers face surprisingly little competition from the incumbents who had dominated the previous wave of enterprise resource planning, ERP? The answer lies in a fundamental shift enabled by the internet, a transition from computation-centric to communication-centric applications, and a corresponding expansion of the very definition of the enterprise. The internet enabled a new generation of enterprise automation with product features and capabilities that simply weren't feasible in the older client-server world. These new companies designed their products for the internet, organizing around real-time data and embracing an extended network that included not just employees, but customers, trading partners, and suppliers. Simply grafting a web interface onto an existing client-server application, which many tried, was like putting lipstick on a pig. It missed the core architectural change. The new internet era applications were designed to reach throughout the enterprise and, crucially, beyond its traditional boundaries. They engaged a broader ecosystem in a dynamic web of communication. The application logic itself was distributed across many desktops and eventually webtops accessible from anywhere, and became deeply woven into the fabric of primary business activities. This was powerful because most business processes are fundamentally exercises in structured communication, from recruiting to customer sales and support, like Kana Communications addressed, to procurement and trade, Ariba's focus. The modern internet application succeeded by organizing, enhancing, and automating these vital communication flows. Network connectivity inherently drives optimal application design. Think back to the early days of networking. Incompatible machines and poor connectivity led to islands of automation. often characterized by batch communications and manual file sharing. Networks grew tentatively from the workgroup level up. Ubiquitous real-time access to ERP data across an entire company was largely out of the question. Most employees viewed their computers primarily as personal productivity tools running Word and Excel. ERP companies logically designed applications focused on specific functional departments like human resources or sales force automation. The barriers, both technical and conceptual, between departments were significant. The corporate intranet changed that. It provided a lingua franca, common communication protocol between machines, allowing for truly enterprise-wide applications. Suddenly, any employee with a web browser could potentially access a purchasing application, regardless of their department or location. This radically shifted how developers could envision partitioning application logic. Network computing, hosted applications, and peer-to-peer architectures emerged, rendering historic client-server topologies increasingly obsolete. It wasn't just marketing hyperbole when Oracle claimed to have stopped client-server development altogether. It was symbolic of a genuine paradigm shift. As you'd expect, this unleashed a swarm of private companies systematically re-engineering virtually every business activity for this new web-resident deployment model. Consider financial planning. Traditionally, CFOs used computation-centric standalone applications rooted in accounting principles. These were designed primarily for statutory external reporting, not real-time management decision-making in high-velocity businesses. A company like Closed Loop Solutions, a DFJ investment, developed an internet-age alternative. By breaking out of the CFO's office and connecting throughout the enterprise, Closed Loop captured a continuous view of the financial environment, integrating real-time feedback from frontline managers intimately aware of changing marketplace conditions. Budgets and hiring plans could adjust dynamically. In resource scheduling for the booming service economy, Xtime offered a hosted Sabre system. It provided a real-time communication network connecting service companies, think auto repair shops, salons, medical offices, with consumers, allowing easy 24/7 appointment booking via web or phone. In supply chain optimization, first-generation companies like i2 Technologies and Manugistics delivered centralized systems for optimizing inventory within a single company. A next-generation company like Saltare, another DFJ investment, developed a real-time system that ran across the entire supply chain extranet. By facilitating information sharing between companies, Saltare's distributed application enabled far greater economic gains in efficiency and inventory reduction. Extranets became more important than internal ERP systems. What did these diverse examples have in common? They organized around real-time information and extended communication beyond functional silos or company walls to engage a diverse set of people: employees, customers, partners, suppliers. The pattern repeated across numerous applications: tacit knowledge systems for employee expertise discovery, seeyouThere.com for event planning and RSVPs, Work Exchange for professional services, extranets, Magnifi for marketing partner communications, Release Now for distributing digital products. This expansion naturally extended to the wireless domain. Companies like Centerpost, Par3 Communications, and Viaphone began extending customer relationship management CRM applications to cell phones, pagers, and PDAs, bringing critical business communications directly to mobile workers and customers. The deployment model shifted dramatically as well. Most of these new applications could be offered as hosted services accessed through a standard browser. This meant frequent invisible upgrades, easy access to external real-time data feeds, and effortless deployment across all corporate desktops and remote webtops, at home, overseas, anywhere. Hosting also enabled powerful industry-level automation like group purchasing consortia and allowed for best practices benchmarking across participating companies. Perhaps most significantly, the hosted service model opened up a vast, previously underserved market: small businesses. These businesses dominate the US economy numerically. Over 98% of employers have fewer than 100 employees, yet historically operated as islands. If US small businesses were a nation, they'd have the third largest GNP in the world. But prior to web-hosted services, there was no efficient way to reach them. No direct sales force would call. They served themselves primarily through office supply stores. Suddenly, sophisticated services previously requiring expensive software, complex corporate installations, and direct sales forces became accessible. Companies like Ariba launched network services to aggregate the buying power of small businesses. TouchScape offered affordable CRM solutions tailored for them. Athena Health managed doctors' offices as a service. eBenefits offered free HR services. The missing link was the distribution channel, but web service aggregators like digitalwork.com started forging effective paths to reach small businesses online. Another key channel emerged, the remotely managed desktop. Everdream, a DFJ company, pioneered subscription computing, offering small businesses bulletproof PCs managed over the internet, essentially turning computing into a utility. This solved immediate IT support pain points and simultaneously established Everdream as a trusted brand and channel for delivering other web-based services. With viable channels in place, procurement automation, marketing automation, Salesforce automation, the tools of large enterprises finally became available to the small business sector. For the service providers targeting this market, it felt like discovering El Dorado. However, this expansion of connectivity and information flow highlighted a new challenge within the enterprise. Efficiently finding expertise, not just documents. Information is the lifeblood of the modern economy, and the basis of competition increasingly revolves around how companies process it. Most of us are information workers, yet we face common frustrations. How do you find someone within your company who has a contact at a potential partner or who knows the answer to a niche technical question? Broadcasting emails creates smog and wastes collective time. Most people communicate within small insular groups, rarely tapping the full potential of distributed knowledge and connections within their organization. Traditional knowledge management systems primarily focused on document management, but knowledge captured in documents tends to be dated, static, and lacking context. Worse, these systems often relied on voluntary contributions, asking employees to upload information for the benefit of others. This ignored basic human nature. People saw little direct benefit from contributing their own expertise and potentially faced downsides like getting peppered with questions, leading to a free rider problem. What was needed wasn't knowledge management, but expertise discovery. Often, the best solution to a problem isn't a document, but a person. A relevant expert who can provide a quick answer or pointer. It's not just what you know, but whom you know. But how do you find that expertise? The most current comprehensive snapshot often resides within the company's email system, a rich corpus of tacit, timely knowledge reflecting employees, customers, suppliers, and partners. Yet this knowledge is typically fractured, locked within individual accounts, isolated by perceived privacy concerns. Tacit knowledge systems, another DFJ investment, tackled this creatively. Their software acted as a secure background observer, performing statistical analysis on keyword frequency within emails without violating privacy. It automatically generated an evergreen expertise directory. When composing an email, users would see their address book contacts ranked by relevance to the email's content. Users retained complete control over their own generated profiles, deciding what, if anything, was visible or usable for matching. They didn't need to change work habits. The system learned passively. This automated expertise management brokered connections, delivering human ingenuity where needed. Companies like Texaco, JP Morgan, and HP adopted Tacit to tap into their distributed expertise. This concept of an expertise economy naturally extended beyond the single enterprise. The potential existed to tap the collective expertise of the world's population. Someone, somewhere, always has the answer you're looking for, whether it's about competitors to a new company or the crowds on a vacation beach. We are all experts in something. The internet provided for the first time the infrastructure to make a global market for this distributed information. Inforocket.com, for instance, created a trading community, an eBay for information, where users could post questions and bid to answer them, overcoming challenges like quality control for intangible information products. This tapped into a fundamental economic asymmetry, those with time versus those with money, those needing answers versus those possessing information. A college student in India could earn money researching competitors for a US executive. The asynchronous global nature of the web meant questions posted in one time zone could be answered anywhere. Professional services like translation, graphic arts, computer support, much of the service economy could theoretically become freely tradable globally. The boundaries between expertise pools were dissolving, both within corporations and globally. The networked expertise economy held the promise of transcending historic barriers of nation states and time zones, potentially allowing us for the first time to truly harness the collective intelligence of the human hive. The enterprise wasn't just expanding to include partners and suppliers, it was potentially expanding to tap into a global network of knowledge and skill. Part 2, expanding horizons. Nanotech, Cleantech, and the Bio-Renaissance. Early 2000s, early 2010. While the internet reshaped the flow of information and commerce, another, perhaps even more profound revolution was gathering pace beneath the surface, driven by our increasing ability to understand and engineer the very building blocks of matter and life. The relentless march of Moore's law wasn't just making computers faster, it was becoming a potent accelerant for all sciences, turning traditional laboratory work increasingly into an information science powered by simulation and computation. This period, roughly the early 2000s into the 2010, saw the dramatic convergence of information technology, biotechnology, and the then nascent field of nanotechnology, the ability to engineer matter with atomic precision. Part 2 explores this exciting expansion of horizons, delving into the nexus where these scientific frontiers meet, navigating the practical business paths for commercializing nanotech amidst the futuristic hype, witnessing the burgeoning field of clean tech as it began to harness these deep technological advances for sustainable energy, efficiency, and resources, and recognizing the growing power of biology not just as a field to be decoded, but as a profound muse, offering unparalleled efficiency and complex solutions that could inspire innovation across computing, materials, energy, and beyond. We were beginning to see how matter itself could become programmable code. Chapter 5, the new convergence, info, bio, nano. Around the turn of the millennium, a fascinating pattern emerged among some of the giants of the information technology revolution, figures like Bill Gates, Paul Allen, Jim Clark, and Larry Ellison. Rather than focusing their personal investments and philanthropic efforts solely on the next generation of software, they increasingly turned their attention towards biotechnology, bioinformatics, and bioengineering. It seemed as though those who had reached the pinnacle of computing recognized how much more there was to learn, particularly from the intricate information systems inherent in biology. This convergence wasn't merely a curiosity, it signaled a profound shift, a blurring and blending of formerly distinct scientific domains into a unified, powerful new discipline. As we race towards the complete mapping of the human genome, and embarked on the even more difficult task of deciphering the complex dance of protein folding and interaction, the accelerating pace of learning wasn't just improving medical diagnostics and treatments, it was simultaneously providing profoundly powerful new models for programming, computation, and the development of complex systems. For decades, the genetic code and the intricate workings of the mind seemed to exist on a different plane, vastly more complex and subtle than our relatively crude programming models. There was a huge semantic and conceptual gap between the digital world we engineered and the evolved beauty of biological systems. But that gap was beginning to narrow rapidly. Myriad projects, from top-down efforts mapping the brain's visual pathways to bottom-up research exploring stem cells and fetal development, were unveiling the intricate information processing occurring within cells genes, and neural networks. We were beginning to decode not just the static blueprint of life, but the dynamic processes governing development over both individual lifespans and evolutionary eons. At the heart of this convergence lay the relentless march of Moore's law. Originally observed in the semiconductor industry, its impact rippled outwards. As more and more laboratory sciences transformed into information sciences driven by simulation, data analysis, and computational modeling, Moore's law began to innervate fields far removed from traditional computing. It brought the exponential pace of change, characteristic of the information age, to domains like biology and material science, catalyzing rapid progress and disruptive potential. This computational lens revealed the astonishing efficiency of biological information processing. Consider the human genome, the entire biological program that orchestrates the development of our cells, organs, bodies, and minds. If you were to encode this vast instruction set digitally using just 2 bits for the 4 DNA bases A, T, C, and G, the resulting 750 megabyte file, even before significant compression for redundant sequences and evolutionary cruft, would be smaller than a standard installation of Microsoft Office. Compress it further, accounting for the belief that much of the genome is non-coding junk DNA, and you might arrive at roughly 60 megabytes of concentrated, essential information. Contemplating the relative simplicity of Office compared to the staggering complexity of a human being was, frankly, humbling. It spoke volumes about the compact power of biological code and perhaps highlighted the relative inelegance of our own software engineering practices. Where does this biological efficiency come from? In part, it stems from the sophisticated use of feedback loops operating across electrical, physical, and chemical domains. Biological systems aren't static code executed linearly. They are dynamic, adaptive systems constantly responding to their environment. We learned in Biology 101 about distinct muscle cell types. Yet experiments like dynamic cardiomyoplasty showed that skeletal muscle could be transformed into functional cardiac muscle through persistent electrical stimulation via a pacemaker. Physical forces also play a critical role. Bone surfaces roughened in a knee joint can convert to fibrocartilage under shear stress, and fetal skeletal development is actively shaped by motion and physical stresses. Chemical feedback governs everything from neuron growth to hormonal homeostasis. The brain itself is perhaps the ultimate example of feedback-driven complexity. Its staggering interconnectivity, roughly 100 trillion synapses linking 60 billion neurons, cannot possibly be hard-coded in our comparatively tiny genome. Instead, the brain is grown. Initial wiring follows chemical gradients followed by massive, somewhat random sprouting of connections driven by electrochemical feedback. Static, storms. Subsequently, a crucial pruning process eliminates perhaps 90% of these connections based on usage patterns. This period of peak synaptic density and energy consumption occurs around age 2 or 3, highlighting a developmental process radically different from installing software from a disk. This biological blueprint has long inspired computer scientists, particularly in the field of artificial intelligence, AI. The neural network approach directly mimics the brain's architecture, involving interconnected nodes whose connection strengths are iteratively adjusted through training and feedback propagation. These networks excel at tasks like pattern recognition, speech, vision, where traditional rules-based programming often struggles. They demonstrate tolerance for noise and error, much like our own perceptual systems. The coding efficiency of DNA also relies on complex interactions between genes. Regulatory genes produce proteins that act as switches, responding to signals to control the activity of other genes or proteins, creating a dense mesh of direct and indirect controls. We see the echoes of this in the bundling of traits in offspring. This complexity, however, implies that genetic reengineering requires deep systemic knowledge. Tweaking a single gene can have unforeseen side effects throughout the network, like the observed link between genetically enhanced memory and heightened pain sensitivity in rats. Our genetic code functions like a dense network of nested hyperlinks, far removed from simple linear programming. Computer programmers have long used analogous concepts like indirect pointers and recursive loops. More recently, biological processes have directly inspired fields like evolutionary programming, where algorithms compete and evolve within simulated environments through selection and mutation. These techniques hold the potential to find solutions that surpass human design capabilities, perhaps even overcoming the local optimization limitations inherent in natural evolution. The burgeoning World Wide Web itself could be seen as the first large-scale experiment in applying biological growth principles to a technological system. Standing at the intersection of these trends was nanotechnology, defined as the engineering of matter at the molecular scale, typically 1 to 100 nanometers. Nanotech represents more than just further miniaturization. It's a transition zone where the familiar rules of classical physics give way to the counterintuitive phenomena of quantum mechanics. Materials exhibit entirely new properties at this scale. Recall the example of mundane aluminum becoming explosive when ground into nanoparticles. This quantum realm offers fundamentally new ways to build products and interface with biological systems. More profoundly, nanotech acted as the nexus of the sciences. It forced a convergence, breaking down the isolating jargon and conceptual silos that separated physics, chemistry, biology, material science, and computer science. To understand and manipulate matter at the nanoscale required interdisciplinary collaboration and a shared language. New academic centers and research initiatives physically located nanotech facilities at the hub, connecting engineering, medicine, and computer science buildings, symbolizing this crucial role. Biotechnology itself could be viewed as a subset of nanotechnology, an existence proof demonstrating the power of molecular systems to self-replicate, process information, and build macroscopic structures from the bottom up. We were already learning to hijack these evolved biological nanomachines. Modified DNA could act as molecular tweezers or logic gates. Viruses could be reprogrammed to precisely assemble non-biological materials like lattices of metal atoms. This convergence fueled a virtuous cycle. Advances in IT, driven by Moore's law, provided the computational power needed to simulate and understand biological and nanoscale systems. Discoveries in biology and nanotech, in turn, provided inspiration and new paradigms for information processing and complex systems engineering. Lab science was transforming into information science, designed on a computer, tested via simulation, sometimes moving beyond the traditional lab bench entirely. The potential implications were staggering. If physical production itself could migrate to the rapid, iterative innovation cycles of information technology, if matter itself could essentially become code, programmable, and reproducible like software, the foundations of manufacturing, logistics, and the entire physical goods economy could be restructured. We were entering a period of profound learning and capability expansion, an intellectual renaissance interwoven across the sciences. The compounding advances in infotech, biotech, and nanotech were creating an era of exponential growth in the learning-doing cycle. Despite our human tendency to project linear futures, the pace of progress seemed destined only to accelerate, driven by this powerful convergence at the frontiers of science and technology. Chapter 6, Business Paths to Nanotechnology. As the excitement surrounding nanotechnology grew in the early 2000s, fueled by breakthroughs in imaging individual atoms and sequencing the genome, the inevitable question arose for investors like us. Amidst the futuristic visions and scientific potential, where were the viable businesses? The promise of manipulating matter at the molecular level was profound, suggesting revolutionary changes across nearly every industry. But translating that promise into commercial reality presented unique challenges, particularly concerning market timing and the very real problem of interfacing the nanoscale with the macroscopic world. While nanotech, defined broadly as the control and manipulation of matter from 1 to 100 nanometers, offered unique quantum properties and new ways to engineer materials, the nano label itself wasn't enough. As value investors, we weren't investing in nanotech as a sector. We were investing on a case-by-case basis in promising companies applying these principles. That meant looking for the traditional hallmarks: strong business plans, large potential markets, clear product strategies, solid intellectual property, and good management teams. Frankly, the Nano label often increased our skepticism, a necessary filter against the hype that inevitably surrounds emerging frontiers. As my colleague Daniel Kolber at NGen Partners aptly put it, to draw circles around nanotechnology and call it an industry is inauthentic. We thought in terms of specific applications: a fuel cell deal, a battery deal, a diagnostics deal. The underlying nanoscale technology was an enabler, not the end game itself. The most significant challenge from a business perspective was market timing. While the long-term potential seemed undeniable, the National Science Foundation projected a $1 trillion market within 15 years, and I personally felt we were entering an epoch comparable to the Industrial Revolution. The path from lab discovery to revenue-generating product was often unclear and potentially very long. When would these technologies mature? Which applications would reach the market first? We needed opportunities where commercialization felt plausible within a venture capital timeframe, typically looking for a major product ramp within 3 to 5 years, and the potential for a significant inflection point like an IPO or acquisition within 5 to 7 years. Investing purely in 20-year research quests, however fascinating, wasn't our model. This timing challenge was deeply intertwined with what I started calling the interface problem. Imagine having a nanoscale marvel today. A molecular supercomputer, a tiny medical robot. How would you power it? How would you communicate with it? How does it interact with the world outside its Lilliputian dimensions? Just as a powerful Pentium chip is useless without the entire hierarchy of packaging, printed circuit boards, power supplies, and the electrical grid connecting it to the macro world, any nanoscale component requires a similar bridging infrastructure. The question became, which paths to nanotech built or leveraged this necessary hierarchy effectively? Looking across the landscape of startups and research labs, 2 primary strategies emerged to cross this nano to macro chasm, each with distinct advantages, challenges, and likely timelines. Path 1, the top-down semiconductor route, MEMS to NEMS. This approach follows the historical trajectory of the semiconductor industry itself, echoing Richard Feynman's original vision of iteratively shrinking our tools down to the atomic scale. We saw companies pursuing the gradual miniaturization of microelectromechanical systems, MIMS. Devices already revolutionizing automotive sensors like airbag triggers and inkjet printers, down into the nanometer domain of NEMS, nano-electromechanical systems. Companies like Zyvex pursued nanoscale robotic manipulators, while Scywave engineered MEMS structures for various markets using customized semiconductor fabs. The advantage here was leveraging existing industry infrastructure and knowledge. These efforts represented market extensions, often finding niches along the way. MEMS was already a multi-billion-dollar market, projected to grow significantly. The interface hierarchy was inherited from the semiconductor world. The path from chip to package to board was understood. However, this path faced constraints. Progress was often tied to the expensive, complex, and sometimes slow evolution of semiconductor manufacturing technology. Building MEMS and NEMS typically required cleanroom fabs, long turnaround times, and significant capital, particularly as lithography tools escalated in price, what some called Moore's second law. Furthermore, traditional semiconductor manufacturing is fundamentally planar, making the creation of complex 3D structures difficult. Companies like Microfabrica, then Memgen, sought to address this by developing non-silicon-based rapid 3D micromachining tools outside the traditional fab environment, trying to expand the market and speed up prototyping. Crucially, this top-down path relied heavily on advancements in nanoscale tools. The enabling technologies for manipulating, visualizing, and characterizing matter at these dimensions. We invested in several companies focused here. Nanolithography. Molecular Imprints developed a novel imprint lithography using photocurable liquids and etched quartz templates, drastically lowering the cost compared to traditional optical lithography and finding a place on the official semiconductor roadmap, ITRS. Nano manipulation. Eric's created systems using thousands of holographically controlled laser tweezers capable of manipulating tiny objects like cells or even organelles inside living cells in 3D without physical contact. Metrology Imago Scientific Instruments developed atom probe microscopes, LEAP, that could reconstruct 3D images of materials atom by atom, providing unprecedented chemical and structural information vital for chip and disk drive manufacturers working at the nanoscale. These tools were critical enablers, allowing for more precise control and analysis, which in turn would allow for the creation of better tools. The classic feedback loop of technological progress along the miniaturization curve. But ultimately, this path felt incremental, building upon existing paradigms rather than creating entirely new ones based on the unique physics of the nanoscale. Path 2, the bottom-up biological route. A radically different approach, and one I personally found more intellectually exciting and potentially faster for certain applications, involved looking to biology as the ultimate nanotechnology. Nature already operates with nanoscale precision, using molecular machinery honed over billions of years of evolution. Biological systems are masters of bottom-up construction. They grow complex 3D structures via replication, evolution, and self-assembly, typically in aqueous environments at room temperature, starkly different from the high vacuum, high temperature conditions of a fab. They are inherently limited at the interface with the inorganic world. Connecting a biological sensor to a traditional electronic circuit, for example, remains a challenge. They operate based on principles we are only beginning to understand, representing significant gaps in our knowledge of systems biology, complexity theory, and emergent behavior. Crucially, however, biology provides a powerful pre-existing hierarchy of components and interpreters of digital molecular code, specifically DNA and the cellular machinery that reads it. And the ribosome, for instance, is a remarkable nanoscale factory. Only about 20 nanometers across, composed of approximately 100,000 atoms, it reads the digital instructions encoded in messenger RNA and precisely assembles proteins, the workhorse molecules of life. It's a stunning existence proof of what's possible with molecular machines. The strategy here wasn't necessarily to rebuild these machines from scratch, but to hijack or reprogram these highly evolved systems. We saw numerous examples of researchers leveraging this biological bootstrap. Scientists modifying self-assembling proteins from heat-loving microbes, thermophiles, to create precise electrode patterns for electronics or solar cells. Teams using directed evolution to breed viruses like the M13 bacteriophage at MIT to act as scaffolds, binding and organizing inorganic semiconductor materials with molecular precision. Craig Vender's ambitious minimal genome project at IBEA aimed to strip down a simple bacterium, Mycoplasma genitalium, to its absolute essential gene set, 300 genes, creating a basic self-replicating chassis onto which new functionalities like generating hydrogen fuel using sunlight could be layered by synthesizing and inserting custom DNA cassettes. This approach tapped into the incredible information density of the genome, smaller than Microsoft Office, remember, and the sophisticated feedback loops biology uses. It leveraged billions of years of R&D. The key limitation wasn't building the nanoscale components, but understanding the complex biological systems well enough to effectively reprogram them. Yet, driven by Moore's law in sequencing and computation, our pace of learning in genomics and systems biology was accelerating exponentially. The prospect of fully understanding even a minimal organism seemed tantalizingly achievable. Hybrid strategies, bridging the paths. While the top-down and bottom-up paths offered distinct advantages, perhaps the most promising near-term commercial opportunities lay in hybrid approaches, combining the self-assembly strengths of the bottom-up world with the established infrastructure and market interfaces of the top-down semiconductor industry. Zetacor, a molecular electronics company we backed in Denver, exemplified this. They synthesized novel organic molecules, multiporphyrin nanostructures resembling chlorophyll, capable of storing multiple bits of information stably. Instead of completely redesigning the memory chip, they leveraged standard silicon wafer processing. As a final manufacturing step, a solution containing these molecules was simply splashed onto the wafer. The molecules would then self-assemble only onto predefined exposed metal regions created by the earlier top-down lithography, forming the memory cells. The beauty of this approach was its market interface. The resulting chip looked and behaved like a standard memory chip, DRAM or flash compatible to the outside world. Customers didn't need to know about the nano inside. It elegantly bypassed the need for radical changes in the existing manufacturing process up to that final step, reducing integration risks and accelerating time to market. Zetacore produced working megabit chips using this method, attracting veteran Intel co-founder Les Vadash to its board, a strong validation. Generalizing from this, it seemed likely that early revenue in molecular electronics would come from products leveraging self-assembly onto conventional substrates. One-dimensional structures like chemical sensors or two-dimensional arrays for memory, displays, camera sensors, CCDs, and solar cells, business model and IP considerations. The path chosen also influenced viable business models. The strength of intellectual property became paramount. If a nanotech startup held strong composition of matter patents, akin to a biotech company's protection for a new drug molecule, then a biotech licensing model might work. The startup could develop the core technology and partner with larger players possessing manufacturing and market access, earning royalties without needing to build everything themselves. And alternatively, if the core innovation was more process-oriented or less defensible, a company might need to adopt the fabless semiconductor model, designing its product, but outsourcing manufacturing. This required significant capital for marketing, sales, and distribution to bring its own branded product to market. The vertical integration question, how much of the value chain must the startup control, depended heavily on where the value was recognized, the strength of IP, the nature of partnerships, and industry standards. Nanotech commercialization timeline, circa 2005 view. So pulling these threads together, how did we see the nanotech commercialization landscape unfolding from our vantage point around 2005? Early revenue. Today, tools for R&D and manufacturing, bulk materials, powders, composites, simple 1D sensors, larger MEMS devices. Several public and revenue-generating companies already existed here. Medium term, roughly 3 to 7 years out. 2D nanoelectronics, memory displays, solar cells leveraging hybrid approaches, hierarchically structured materials, hybrid bio-nano applications, particularly in energy storage conversion, passive drug delivery systems and diagnostics, improved implantable medical devices. Long term, 10 to 20 plus years out. 3D nanoelectronics and integration. True nanomedicine with targeted therapeutics and perhaps artificial chromosomes. Routine use of quantum computers for molecular design. Ultimately, the Drexlerian vision of machine phase molecular manufacturing where matter becomes code. Of course, the safest long-term prediction was always that the most important developments would be things we couldn't currently foresee. The very nature of this disruptive frontier meant that unexpected breakthroughs were not just possible, but likely. The digitization of manufacturing, enabling the production of almost anything from basic building blocks, held the potential to transform the global economy and even our concepts of ownership, though that future still seemed distant.
Navigating these business paths required careful consideration of technology maturity, market interfaces, manufacturing scalability, intellectual property, and viable business models. It wasn't enough to have brilliant science. Successful nanotech ventures needed a pragmatic strategy to bridge the gap from the nanoscale lab to the macroscopic marketplace within a time frame that made business sense.
Chapter 7, Investing in Cleantech, Energy Efficiency and Biology's Role. By the mid to late 2000s, the confluence of rising energy prices, growing environmental awareness amplified by figures like Al Gore, geopolitical instability surrounding fossil fuels, and crucially, breakthroughs stemming from nanotechnology and biotechnology created fertile ground for a new wave of innovation, clean tech. For us at DFJ and our dedicated clean tech fund, DFJ Element, this wasn't just another investment sector. It felt like one of the largest market opportunities we had ever encountered, potentially dwarfing even the information technology revolution in its ultimate scale and impact. We weren't alone in recognizing this. Capital began flowing into the sector, creating what some called a green gold rush. While any such rush carries the risk of hype and Me Too investments, and we certainly saw some of that, particularly in areas like certain biofuels, the underlying drivers felt profound and enduring. The $6 trillion global energy economy, largely unchanged for decades, seemed ripe for disruption. The challenge wasn't if a transition to cleaner, more sustainable energy and resource use would occur, but how and when, and which technologies and business models would lead the way. Our investment thesis wasn't predicated on fleeting factors like high oil prices. In fact, we deliberately avoided backing companies whose business models required oil to stay above a certain threshold, say $30 a barrel. We believed the long-term economic and technological advantages of cleaner solutions would eventually win out, regardless of short-term commodity price fluctuations. Similarly, while supportive government policies like tax credits or renewable portfolio standards were helpful accelerants, we never made investments that depended solely on subsidies or regulatory shifts remaining in place. True disruption had to stand on its own economic and technological merits. And what excited us most was the sheer breadth of innovation erupting across the clean tech landscape, much of it drawing heavily from the biological and nanoscale sciences we had already been exploring. Biology as the engine of clean innovation.
Perhaps the most radical and promising front was the application of synthetic biology and microbial re-engineering to energy and materials challenges, what I started calling industrial biotech 2.0. The idea was simple yet powerful. Harness the metabolic machinery of microorganisms, bacteria, algae, yeast, fungi, which have evolved over billions of years to process hydrocarbons, harvest solar energy, and perform complex chemical conversions with remarkable efficiency and specificity, often using waste products as inputs and operating cleanly at ambient temperatures. With the advent of low-cost DNA sequencing, reading the code, and high-throughput DNA synthesis, writing the code, we were moving beyond the laborious cut-and-paste genetic engineering of the past. We could now design and build entirely new genetic circuits, treat DNA like software, and essentially program microbes to perform specific tasks like producing fuels or high-value chemicals. Craig Venter's Synthetic Genomics, a company I joined the board of, was at the absolute forefront, literally creating life from scratch with synthetic DNA, aiming to replace vast swaths of the petrochemical industry. The potential applications were astounding. Biofuels, engineering algae, like ExxonMobil pursued in partnership with Synthetic Genomics to directly secrete transportation fuels using only sunlight, CO2, and water. Or developing microbes, as BP explored, that could convert underground coal deposits directly into cleaner burning natural gas, eliminating the need for mining and combustion. While early enthusiasm for ethanol proved misplaced, whether from corn or even cellulose, the potential for microbes to efficiently convert various waste streams or non-food biomass into drop-in replacements for gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel remained immense. Green chemicals, companies like Genomatica, a DFJ investment, demonstrated the power of combining computational pathway design with directed evolution. They computationally identified tens of thousands of potential metabolic routes to produce valuable industrial chemicals like butanediol, used in spandex and plastics, a chemical no known organism naturally produces, starting from simple sugars. They then engineered the optimal pathway into microbes. Crucially, they also crippled the microbe's alternative survival pathways,
forcing them to maximize production of the target chemical in order to thrive. This clever technique aligned the microbe's evolutionary drive, rapid growth, with the company's goal, high chemical yield. Subsequent artificial evolution in the lab, repeatedly selecting the fastest growing, highest producing variants, yielded improvements thousands of times greater than what rational design alone could achieve. This highlighted a key theme: evolution often trumps pure design in optimizing complex biological systems. Glycos Biotechnologies was another example, focused on converting glycerin waste from biodiesel production into valuable chemicals. Efficiency, recycling, and water. Beyond generating clean energy and chemicals, significant opportunities existed in radically improving efficiency and enabling reuse and recycling. After all, the cleanest energy is the energy you don't use, and the most sustainable material is the one you don't need to mine or manufacture anew. Building efficiency. Buildings consume a huge fraction of our energy. Companies like Scientific Conservation, another DFJ investment, developed smart software platforms for continuous commissioning, constantly monitoring and optimizing HVAC systems, detecting maintenance needs, and adjusting settings dynamically. Their early results, like achieving 18% net energy savings for Boeing in just 4 months, showed the power of applying IT and data analytics to legacy infrastructure. Green IT, even the IT industry itself had opportunities to become greener. Peer-to-peer architectures, like those used by Wowd, a DFJ investment for distributed web search, could potentially harness spare computing cycles on millions of desktops, avoiding the energy and cost of building massive centralized data centers. Recycling and reuse. This felt like one of the most underserved markets within clean tech. Finding better ways to reclaim, reprocess, and reuse materials, moving towards a circular economy, held enormous potential, extending beyond simple municipal recycling to industrial feedstocks and complex products. Water purification. The energy cost of water is staggering. California uses almost 20% of its electricity moving water. The Middle East uses half its oil for desalination. This created a huge incentive for disruptive purification technologies. Oasis Water, for example, commercialized a forward osmosis process developed at Yale that promised significantly lower energy consumption than traditional reverse osmosis, potentially making desalination cost-effective even where fresh water seems relatively abundant. Finding novel membrane technologies, perhaps inspired by biological systems like the kidney, remained a key area of interest. Other frontiers: electric transport, lighting, and agriculture. The clean tech umbrella extended further still. Electric transportation. This was clearly a major disruptive force underway. Tesla Motors, where I served on the board and drove car number 1, demonstrated that electric cars didn't have to be glorified golf carts. They could be desirable, high-performance vehicles. The fundamental efficiency advantage of electric drivetrains, around 88% efficient compared to maybe 20% for internal combustion, was compelling. While the transition would take time, the path seemed inevitable, driven by declining battery costs, itself enabled by nanotech innovations from companies like A123 Systems and high-power lithium, rising performance, and lower total cost of ownership. Electric bicycles and scooters were also exploding, particularly in Asia, outselling electric cars and offering a glimpse of widespread adoption at lower price points. Solid-state lighting, LEDs represented another efficiency play with massive potential, poised to replace incandescent and fluorescent lighting. Nanotechnology played a role here too in developing novel phosphors and improving light extraction into matics. Sustainable agriculture, rethinking agriculture to improve yields, reduce resource inputs, water, fertilizer, pesticides, and enhance nutritional value is critical. Kaima, an Israeli company in our portfolio, developed innovative genetic modification techniques using polyploidy, essentially doubling chromosome pairs, to create higher yielding, more robust crops without falling under the traditional GMO regulatory hurdles The investor's perspective in a downturn. Interestingly, the economic recession that began in 2008, while challenging for many sectors, presented unique opportunities for clean tech startups and investors. Disruption favors new entrants. Market turmoil, like technological disruption, destabilizes incumbents and creates openings for agile startups trying to compete with GM or Chrysler. Their simultaneous financial crises made it a perfect time for a company like Tesla to gain traction. Better time to build. Echoing historical patterns, HP, Microsoft, Cisco were all founded in down markets. Companies started during recessions often build healthier, more frugal cultures. They tend to focus more intensely on customers rather than chasing the next venture round, fostering resilience. Lower valuations, less competition for capital meant more favorable entry points for investors. History suggested that downturns were often the best times to invest in early-stage companies with long-term potential. While some clean tech areas undoubtedly became overfunded during the peak hype cycle, leading to necessary consolidation, the underlying technological drivers and market needs remained robust. We looked for capital-efficient approaches, favoring companies that could prove their core technology cheaply, like Genomatica using aquarium equipment for initial microbial tests instead of building a $20 million pilot plant before scaling up. High-margin opportunities like producing specialty chemicals via biotech rather than competing head-on with commodity fuels were often more attractive early on. Ultimately, the clean tech revolution felt like more than just an investment trend. It tapped into a fundamental desire among entrepreneurs, engineers, and students to work on something meaningful, something that could genuinely improve the world. It attracted top talent. When you combine that human energy with powerful technological enablers drawn from biology, nanotechnology, and information science aimed at solving trillion-dollar problems in energy, materials, water, and food, it's hard not to be optimistic about the potential for profound positive change. It was and remains an incredibly exciting time to be investing at these frontiers. Chapter 8, The Power of Biology as Muse. Across the diverse landscape of technological innovation, from information technology and material science to nanotechnology and energy, a recurring theme emerged with increasing clarity throughout the 2000s. Biology was becoming the ultimate muse. Nature, through the process of evolution over billions of years, had solved complex engineering challenges with an elegance and efficiency that continued to poke us in the eye, constantly embarrassing our best human engineers. And it wasn't just about borrowing specific molecules or processes, though that was happening with increasing sophistication in fields like synthetic biology. More profoundly, biology was providing inspiration, metaphors, and existence proofs that shaped how we approach problem solving in all complex systems. If you were working on the toughest, hairiest problems in computer science, nanotech, robotics, or AI, the path forward likely involved looking to life sciences, not necessarily for literal biological components, but for powerful abstractions and algorithmic blueprints. Why this turn towards biology? Several factors converged. The information lens. As I discussed earlier, the digitization of biology, spearheaded by the Human Genome Project, and accelerated by Moore's law driving down the cost of sequencing and synthesis, transformed life sciences into an information science. We could suddenly read, write, and manipulate the code of life with unprecedented fluency. This informational perspective made biological principles accessible and relevant to computer scientists and engineers in entirely new ways. Unmatched efficiency and complexity. Nature consistently demonstrated solutions vastly more efficient and complex than human designs. Remember the comparison. The entire human genome, the blueprint for building and operating us, occupies less digital space than Microsoft Office. The human brain operates with roughly 100 million times greater power efficiency per calculation than our most advanced microprocessors. Biological systems self-assemble complex three-dimensional structures at room temperature using weak bonds and intricate folding, whereas our manufacturing often relies on brute force, high energy, top-down methods. Proven robustness and adaptability. Evolved systems demonstrate remarkable resilience and adaptability within their environments. They learn, they heal, they respond to feedback in ways that make our engineered systems seem brittle and simplistic by comparison. Think of the complex homeostasis maintaining our body temperature or the adaptive learning occurring in our immune system. This biological renaissance, as I termed it at the Churchill Club in 2006, wasn't just about future doctors. It was attracting students and researchers across disciplines precisely because the breakthrough developments in many fields would increasingly have bio-derived or bio-inspired origins. If Bill Gates or Larry Ellison were undergraduates, then, I speculated, they would likely be studying biology alongside computer science. How is this biological inspiration manifesting across technology? Algorithmic approaches. Perhaps the most pervasive influence was the adoption of evolutionary and biologically inspired algorithms. Neural networks, designed explicitly to mimic cortical structures, proved highly effective for pattern recognition tasks like speech and vision, where traditional programming failed. Genetic algorithms and evolutionary programming use simulated processes of variation and selection to grow solutions. Software, circuit designs, robot control systems that often outperformed human-designed counterparts, even if their inner workings remained inscrutable, as with Danny Hillis's evolved sort algorithm or John Koza's patented antenna designs generated entirely by computer. Artificial immune systems were being developed for computer virus and spam detection, learning to identify threats adaptively. The subsumption architecture in robotics explicitly copied evolution's layered approach, building complex behaviors from simpler, robust reflexes. IBM's autonomic computing initiative aimed to create self-managing, self-healing IT systems inspired by the body's autonomic nervous system. Materials and manufacturing, Nanotech's biological path. As we explored previously, the bottom-up, self-assembling approach to nanotechnology drew heavily from biology. Reprogramming viruses to build semiconductor lattices, MIT using DNA as a scaffold for carbon nanotubes, employing chlorophyll-like molecules for self-assembling memory, Zetacore, or leveraging the existing molecular machinery of the ribosome, all represented borrowing or mimicking nature's nanoscale construction methods. This approach circumvented the limitations and costs of top-down semiconductor fabrication for certain applications. Complex systems engineering, biology provides the ultimate examples of robust, decentralized, complex adaptive systems. How do you build a reliable power grid, a scalable internet architecture, or an AI that doesn't crash constantly? Studying ecosystems, immune systems, brain development, or ant colony behavior offered valuable insights into principles of distributed control, emergence, feedback loops, and graceful degradation, concepts essential for engineering the increasingly complex technological systems we rely on. The challenges faced in managing big data or the burgeoning Internet of Things were fundamentally problems of processing vast amounts of noisy, distributed information, tasks biological sensory systems excel at. This cross-pollination was bidirectional. It drove biology through bioinformatics, sequencing, simulation, and biology-inspired IT. The decoding and reprogramming of biological information systems using DNA synthesizers that could write millions of base pairs per day was not only advancing medicine and creating the field of synthetic biology for clean energy and materials, but was also feeding back powerful concepts into computer science itself. The core insight was recognizing that many of the grand challenges we faced involved creating systems of staggering complexity. Rather than assuming we could fully comprehend and design such systems top-down with human ingenuity alone, we could look to the algorithmic power of evolution, nature's own R&D process. We could leverage the libraries of pre-evolved code assemblers like the ribosome and robust subsystems that biology provided. We could learn from its information processing strategies, its efficiency, and its resilience. Of course, fully harnessing this biological muse required deep interdisciplinary understanding. It meant breaking down the traditional barriers between fields. It required embracing a different mode of engineering, less like traditional design and control. perhaps more like gardening or parenting, setting up the right conditions and guiding an iterative process whose final outcome might exceed our initial comprehension. As we move deeper into the 21st century, it seemed increasingly clear that the future of technology across a vast range of industries would be deeply intertwined with our understanding and application of biological principles. Biology wasn't just another field of science. It was becoming a foundational source of inspiration, a guiding metaphor, and in many cases, the very substrate for the next waves of innovation. The embarrassing efficiency and elegance of nature was finally becoming our greatest teacher. Part 3, the accelerating frontier, AI, space, and complex systems, mid-2000s to present. If the early internet and the subsequent scientific convergence marked new beginnings, the era from the mid-2000s onward has been characterized by a palpable acceleration of change across multiple frontiers simultaneously. The steady, exponential doubling of computational power began yielding results that felt qualitatively different, pushing us rapidly into territory where prediction becomes harder and the sense of future shock feels ever present, impacting us not just generationally, but within our own careers. This part navigates these accelerating frontiers where innovation is currently most dynamic, grappling with the societal implications, both opportunity and potential disruption of this relentless pace, exploring the fundamental dichotomy between top-down design and bottom-up evolution as paradigms for creating the increasingly complex, robust systems demanded by fields like artificial intelligence and synthetic biology, chronicling the exponential rise of machine learning and deep learning as they move from the cloud to the deep edge, embedding intelligence inside nearly everything, witnessing the dramatic revitalization of space exploration driven by commercial enterprise, aiming for the stars and daily observation of our own planet, and examining the emergence of new, more natural interfaces like autonomous vehicles and ubiquitous voice control that promise to weave technology ever more seamlessly, almost invisibly, into the fabric of our lives. We are now truly forging the future at an unprecedented exponential velocity. Chapter 9, Accelerating Change and Societal Shock. We humans tend to think linearly. Our intuition extrapolates the future based on the recent past, assuming a steady, predictable pace of progress. Yet the history of technology, much like biological evolution, is characterized not by linear advancement, but by accelerating change, driven by positive feedback loops, where the tools created in one generation accelerate the discoveries and inventions of the next. Technological capabilities tend to compound exponentially. This exponential dynamic is most famously captured by Moore's law. While often simplified to describe transistor density doubling every 18 months, its true significance lies in the relentless compounding improvement in computational power and data storage capacity available at a given cost. As Ray Kurzweil powerfully illustrated, this exponential trend isn't limited to silicon transistors. It extends back over 110 years, seamlessly bridging across 5 distinct technological paradigms, from electromechanical calculators through vacuum tubes, relays, discrete transistors, and finally integrated circuits. This curve, representing our fundamental capacity to compute, has progressed undeterred by world wars, economic depressions, or recessions. Scientists don't stop thinking during downturns. The engine of innovation marches forward, largely exogenous to the economy, and Moore's law is just one example. Similar exponential or even faster than exponential growth curves characterize progress in fields like internet connectivity, gene sequencing, solved protein structures, medical imaging resolution, and the cost performance of DNA synthesis. As lab sciences become information sciences, driven by simulation and computational analysis, they too hook into this engine of acceleration. The cumulative effect of these compounding exponentials is staggering. Kurzweil offered a useful, if mind-bending, shorthand. The next 20 years of technological progress will be equivalent in terms of magnitude of change to the entire 20th century. Pause for a moment and consider what that implies. For most of us, life at the beginning of the 20th century is abstract history. But in the 1900s America, for example, only 144 miles of paved road existed. 94% of Americans were born at home, most without a telephone, and the vast majority never graduated high school. Reliable electricity and even basic sanitation like indoor bathtubs were luxuries unavailable to over 86% of the population. Now, contemplate the entirety of technology-driven change that occurred over those 100 years. The rise of automobiles, aviation, radio, television, computers, the internet, antibiotics, nuclear power, the mapping of the genome, and realize that an equivalent amount of transformative progress is projected to occur within the span of a single human generation, perhaps by 2020 or 2030. This perpetually accelerating pace pierces the linear presumptions of our intuition. We are biologically wired to anticipate gradual change, but technology now delivers disruptive shifts at a rate that challenges our ability to adapt. The concept of future shock, popularized by Alvin Toffler in the 1970s, described the disorientation felt when societal change happened too quickly, traditionally viewed as an intergenerational phenomenon, parents struggling to understand their children's world. But we were crossing a threshold where future shock was becoming intragenerational. Significant paradigm-altering changes now occur within the span of a single career, even within product cycles. What are the implications of living on the steepening part of this exponential curve? Shrinking forecast horizons, predictability decreases dramatically. Planning cycles based on linear extrapolations become increasingly unreliable. What seemed like a reasonable 5-year business plan might become obsolete in 2. Forecasting next quarter can feel as challenging as forecasting next year used to be. The very idea of a long-range strategic plan becomes increasingly tenuous. Perpetual disruption. As discussed earlier, technological disruption creates opportunities for entrepreneurs and startups. An accelerating pace means more disruption, more often across more industries. Stability becomes the exception, not the rule. Incumbents face relentless pressure to adapt or be overtaken by new entrants leveraging the latest technology waves. Societal adaptation challenges. How does society absorb change when the foundations shift beneath our feet multiple times within a lifetime? What does this mean for education systems? How do we prepare students for jobs and industries that don't even exist yet? How do career paths change when skills can become obsolete rapidly? How do governance structures and regulatory bodies keep pace with technologies evolving far faster than legislative cycles allow? The rise of the black swan. This acceleration contributes to what Nassim Nicholas Taleb termed black swan events, highly impactful, unpredictable occurrences that are rationalized only in hindsight. The rise of Google, the ubiquity of the smartphone, the societal impact of social networks. Few accurately predicted the speed and scale of these transformations beforehand. As complexity and interconnectedness increase driven by technology, our world becomes inherently less predictable, more susceptible to these large-scale unforeseen shifts. Venture capital in many ways becomes a bet on identifying potential black swans early. Potential for increased inequality. One deeply concerning societal implication relates to the distribution of benefits from this technological acceleration. As discussed in the context of the Churchill Club trends in 2009 and 2013, the same technologies that democratize access to information and tools, like the internet connecting billions or MOOCs offering global education, might simultaneously exacerbate economic inequality. The information economy often exhibits winner-take-all dynamics due to network effects and power laws. A few dominant platforms, search, social networks, e-commerce, capture a disproportionate share of the value. Furthermore, as automation and AI advance, driven by machine learning, itself an accelerant, jobs involving routine tasks, whether physical or cognitive, become vulnerable. If large portions of the workforce are displaced by automation, think transportation, customer service, even some white-collar analysis, While the rewards accrue primarily to those who own or create the automating technologies, the gap between rich and poor could widen significantly and persistently. The digital divide might ironically accelerate the economic divide, while technology raises the standard of living for everyone at the bottom of the pyramid. It might stretch the pyramid into an ever sharper spike. If we reach a future of peak jobs where technology creates abundance but eliminates the traditional need for most human labor, how do we navigate that transition socially and politically without rending the fabric of society? This accelerating pace isn't just an abstract trend for technologists. It has profound implications for every aspect of our lives, our careers, our businesses, and the structure of society itself. It presents enormous opportunities for innovation and progress, offering grounds for deep optimism about solving humanity's grand challenges. Yet, it simultaneously demands greater adaptability, resilience, and foresight than ever before. We must learn to surf this exponential wave, embracing lifelong learning and resisting the comfortable but increasingly dangerous assumption of a linear future. Understanding the dynamics of accelerating change is no longer optional. It is essential for navigating the complex, rapidly evolving world of the 21st century. Chapter 10, Design versus Evolution, Building Complex Systems. Many of the most compelling challenges in modern technology across computer science, nanotechnology, synthetic biology, and especially artificial intelligence revolve around a fundamental question: how do we build truly complex, robust, and intelligent systems? As we look towards creating systems that might even exceed human capabilities, two primary paths emerge, presenting what I believe is a fundamental fork in the road to the future: design versus evolution. These two processes for generating complexity are profoundly different, each with distinct strengths and weaknesses. While some hope to blend them, taking the best of both worlds, I suspect they represent largely divergent approaches, and choosing one path often makes it harder to benefit from the other. The path of design. This is the traditional engineering paradigm, the one we are most familiar and comfortable with. Design systems offer predictability, efficiency, and crucially, a sense of control. We, or at least the designers, understand how they work. Their subsystems are typically modular, well-defined, and understandable, allowing for reuse in different contexts. The principles behind object-oriented programming, standardized components, and most engineering disciplines. We build bridges, write software, and assemble machines based on blueprints, schematics, and deliberate, purposeful planning. We accumulate knowledge about how artifacts work and apply that learning to future designs. However, designed systems, particularly complex ones, tend to be brittle. They often break easily when faced with unexpected inputs or conditions outside their designed parameters. Think of the notorious fragility of complex software like Microsoft Windows. It works well within its expected operational envelope, but minor deviations can lead to cascading failures. To date, purposeful design has only conquered relatively simple problems, at least when compared to the complexity found in nature. As I've noted before, the sheer information content required to specify Microsoft Office appears vastly larger than that encoded in the entire human genome, which speaks volumes about the relative efficiency and complexity achievable through different approaches. The path of evolution. In stark contrast stands the power of evolution, not just biological evolution over eons, but the application of simple, iterative evolutionary algorithms within technological domains. The basic recipe is simple: variation, mutation, recombination, and selection. Differential survival or success based on fitness criteria repeated over many cycles. What's remarkable is that these simple, often distributed algorithms can demonstrably accumulate design sophistication and create complexity that is robust, resilient, and highly adapted to its environment. Biological evolution itself provides the only unequivocal existence proof that an algorithm can produce complexity far exceeding that of its antecedents, a process capable of generating intelligence from non-intelligence, complexity from simplicity. The power of this approach is so compelling that engineers have increasingly mimicked its operations. We see this in the training of neural networks, iteratively adjusting connection strengths based on feedback, genetic programming, evolving computer code to solve problems, artificial life simulations, and the use of directed evolution in synthetic biology, like Genomatica evolving microbes for vastly improved chemical production. But evolved systems come with significant disadvantages, the most critical being what I call subsystem inscrutability. While we might understand the evolutionary process perfectly well, the rules of selection, the mutation rates, we don't necessarily understand the internal workings of the resulting artifact. When Danny Hillis used an evolutionary algorithm to create a program for sorting numbers, it worked surprisingly well, yet the resulting code was opaque, mysterious, almost alien. He couldn't easily figure out how it accomplished the task. Had he undertaken the laborious process of reverse engineering it, the insights gained likely wouldn't have been easily generalizable to other evolved systems. Why this inherent opacity? Stephen Wolfram's principle of computational equivalence offers a compelling explanation. It suggests that for many complex processes, including evolution and the behavior of systems like cellular automata, there is no computational shortcut. The only way to know the outcome is to run the simulation step by step. You cannot simply derive a formula to predict the final state without executing the iterative process itself. This implies that reverse evolution, understanding the deep logic of an evolved artifact in the same way we can reverse engineer a designed one, might be fundamentally impossible, or at least computationally irreducible. Therefore, an evolved complex system effectively becomes a black box, defined primarily by its inputs, outputs, and the environment in which it evolved. We cannot easily apply our design intuition to improve its inner workings. Partitioning it into meaningful subsystems is difficult without extensive reverse engineering, if possible at all, and understanding the interfaces between hypothetical partitions well enough to reuse a component in another system, unless co-evolved, seems highly improbable. Think of trying to take the language processing capability from one evolved AI and pasting it into another. The concept feels fundamentally at odds with how such systems develop and function. It's why Jeff Hawkins' suggestion in his book on intelligence of easily swapping cognitive modules in future AI felt like a category error, mixing the properties of designed objects with evolved artifacts, the divergence. This inscrutability creates the core tension and likely divergence between the two paths. Design yields understandable, reusable components, but struggles with deep complexity and robustness. Evolution generates robust, complex solutions, but sacrifices understandability and direct control. Consider the implications for artificial intelligence. If we pursue a purely designed path, perhaps based on symbolic logic, rules-based systems, or meticulously engineered cognitive architectures, we retain understanding and control, but face immense challenges in achieving the robustness, adaptability, and emergent complexity characteristic of true intelligence. The historical limitations of good old-fashioned AI, GOFAI, underscore this difficulty. If, however, we succeed in evolving an AI that passes the Turing test or achieves superintelligence using methods like deep learning trained on vast data sets or genetic programming operating over massive compute resources, we will likely face an alien intelligence. We will have created something defined by its sensory interfaces and emergent behaviors, but whose internal thought processes might be as opaque to us as the workings of our own brains, perhaps even more so. The effort required to reverse engineer such an intelligence could be monumental, dwarfing even the decades of effort currently being poured into neuroscience. And the practical question arises, would we even bother? If the evolutionary process itself can be run much faster than biological timescales allow, perhaps achieving generations of improvement in days or hours, why would we halt that progress for decades to attempt to understand an intermediate stage? It seems far more likely we would simply let the iterative process continue, focusing on refining the selection pressures and training environments, the process variables, rather than dissecting the inscrutable artifacts produced. This implies a first mover advantage of immense proportions for evolved AI. Once started, it could rapidly leave behind any attempt at designed or human hybrid approaches. Can the paths be integrated? This brings us to the grand engineering challenge. Can these two paths be meaningfully integrated to capture the best of both? Can we evolve complexity that transcends human design, yet somehow retain control, understanding, or at least imbue it with beneficial biases like friendliness? The answer remains unclear. Perhaps hybrid approaches are possible at certain interfaces. Could we design modular components within which evolutionary processes optimize function? Could we use designed scaffolding or high-level architectures to guide or constrain evolutionary search? In synthetic biology, techniques like genomaticas demonstrate a form of integration. Design created the initial pathways and constraints, but evolution drove the massive performance gains. Could similar strategies apply to AI? One crucial consideration is path dependence. The initial conditions and early evolutionary steps can profoundly influence the final outcome, especially in complex systems where low-level reflexes might become embedded, like the potential emergence of a survival instinct in any intelligence, shaped by iterated selection tests, regardless of whether survival is explicitly optimized for. Evolving an AI alongside humans within our environment, a co-evolutionary island, might yield a very different outcome than evolving one in pure simulation, potentially more aligned, but also potentially constrained. The journey towards building truly complex systems, particularly advanced AI, forces us to confront this fundamental dichotomy. Design offers familiarity and control, but seems limited in reaching sufficient complexity. Evolution offers a proven path to transcending complexity, but comes with inherent inscrutability and a potential loss of direct control. As Danny Hillis presciently wrote, the greatest achievement of our technology may well be creation of tools that allow us to go beyond engineering, that allow us to create more than we can understand. Choosing which path to emphasize or how to potentially bridge them will shape not only the future of AI, but potentially the future of complexity creation itself. Chapter 11, Intelligence Inside the Rise of Machine Learning. Around 2013, a technological undercurrent that had been building for years began to surface with undeniable force, promising to innervate, to thread intelligence through nearly every facet of technology and industry. I called it Deus Ex Machina at the Churchill Club that year, the rise of machine learning, ML. It wasn't just another software trend, it felt like something more fundamental, a powerful new way to build complex systems, the engine driving the most exciting and seemingly magical new products emerging from the tech frontier. What is machine learning? At its core, it's a set of software algorithms that allow computers to learn patterns directly from data without requiring engineers to explicitly program the rules. Instead of meticulously defining how to recognize a face, understand speech, or translate a language, you provide the system with vast numbers of examples, and a learning engine figures it out. It's a paradigm shift from telling the computer precisely what to do to showing it what you want and letting it learn how. This approach inherently involves relaxing the traditional engineering presumption of complete control. You guide the process, you shape the training data, but you don't fully dictate or even necessarily understand the intricacies of the resulting solution. This humility is perhaps why companies like Google, comfortable operating at the scale of the entire internet's data, embraced ML early and wholeheartedly across their operations. For others, particularly in more traditional industries like medicine or finance, the perceived lack of direct control initially bred caution, though that too is rapidly changing. Why did machine learning, particularly its powerful subset deep learning, which utilizes complex, multi-layered neural networks, experience such explosive growth starting around 2012 to 2013? Several key factors converged. One, compute power. Moore's law had finally delivered the sheer computational horsepower needed to train these data-hungry algorithms efficiently. The shift from traditional CPUs to massively parallel GPUs, graphics processing units, originally designed for rendering pixels, provided orders of magnitude speedups for the matrix multiplication central to neural network training. 2, big data. The digitization of everything, fueled by the internet, mobile devices, and sensor proliferation, created unprecedented volumes of data, the essential fuel for training effective ML models. 3, algorithmic advances. Significant breakthroughs occurred in the design and training of deep neural networks, making them more effective and easier to implement across a wider range of problems. And this confluence created a tipping point. Suddenly, ML wasn't just an academic curiosity, it was the enabling technology behind breakthroughs that captured the public imagination. Think of the uncanny effectiveness of Google's autonomous cars navigating complex city streets, the seemingly effortless real-time translation services, the pattern recognition enabling Siri or Alexa to understand spoken commands, or even the AI playing Go not just at human level, but discovering novel strategies. If a technology introduced in the last 5 to 10 years felt almost magical, chances are high that machine learning was the intelligence inside. The power of ML lies in its ability to tackle problems that exceed the limits of human comprehension and traditional programming. You simply couldn't sit down and write explicit code to cover every eventuality an autonomous car might face. You need a system that learns from vast experience, real and simulated. It's less like programming and more like parenting or growing a brain. You nurture the learning process, but the resulting intelligence develops its own internal logic. Hardware for thought, the Nirvana story, the insatiable demand for computational power to train ever larger deep learning models quickly push beyond the capabilities of even GPUs. This created an opportunity for specialized hardware, a progression mirroring previous shifts in computing, like specialized chips for graphics or networking. This progression typically moves from general purpose CPUs to more parallel GPUs to configurable FPGAs, field programmable gate arrays, and ultimately to custom ASICs, application-specific integrated circuits, designed solely for the task at hand. Nirvana Systems, a company we were thrilled to back from its inception, embodied this next step. Founded by Naveen Rao, Amir Khosrow-Shahi, and Arjun Bansal, combining expertise in neuroscience, distributed computing, and networking, their vision was clear: build custom silicon optimized exclusively for deep learning, aiming for at least a 10x performance and efficiency leap over existing hardware. They were, in a crude analogy, recapitulating the evolutionary history of the brain within computing hardware, moving from the sequential logic of the reptilian CPU towards the massively parallel, memory-centric architecture of the cortex. Their approach involved fundamental innovations: specialized arithmetic, like flex point, optimized for the matrix operations inherent in neural networks, and massive amounts of high bandwidth memory integrated directly onto the chip using advanced 3D stacking techniques, aiming for 32 gigabytes on their first chip, delivering approximately 55 trillion operations per second. They also designed high-speed interconnects, more typical of the networking industry, allowing many chips to be linked into vast computational fabrics capable of tackling unprecedentedly large models. Our due diligence confirmed the pervasive spread of deep learning. Conversations with Amazon, Google, Baidu, and Microsoft revealed ML wasn't just a research project. It was becoming core to product positioning, supply chain management, search algorithms, and even optimizing data center energy efficiency, like Google DeepMind cutting cooling costs by 40%. The customer interest in Nirvana was immense and diverse, initially strong in medical imaging, later exploding in the automotive sector following Tesla's autopilot release. The value Nirvana represented wasn't lost on the incumbents. In 2016, Intel, possessing the world's most advanced manufacturing fabs and a desire to lead the next phase of Moore's Law, acquired the company. It was a powerful validation of the thesis that specialized hardware would be crucial for the future of AI, domain independence, and the value of process. A critical aspect of deep learning is its domain independence. The same underlying algorithms and network architectures that learn to identify cats in images can also learn to translate languages, predict protein folding, assess financial risk, or detect cancerous patterns in medical scans. The expertise lies not in the specific domain, like linguistics or oncology, but in the process of building and training the learning machine. This became clear when building the team at Human Longevity Incorporated, HLI. We hired Franz Oak, who had pioneered Google's world-class translation service. He achieved this remarkable feat without being an expert linguist himself. He focused on building the brain that could learn translation patterns from vast amounts of parallel text, like UN transcripts. When he joined HLI, his mission was to find patterns in genomic and health data to predict disease, a field he initially knew little about. The deep learning expertise was fungible. This has profound implications. It shifts the locus of value creation from the end product to the process of building the learning systems that create those products. The expertise of the brain builder is transferable across industries, leading to intense competition for talent. We saw PhD candidates receiving million-dollar offers, reflecting the scarcity and high leverage of individuals skilled in these new techniques. For businesses, it means that internal advances in ML capabilities, building a better brain, can yield benefits across unrelated product lines or operational areas. Google improving its Go-playing AI helps it build better ad matching algorithms. A Cambrian explosion of applications? This domain independence, coupled with powerful hardware and algorithms, has unleashed a torrent of innovation across industries where DFJ invests. Scientific discovery. Atomwise uses deep learning to screen millions of potential drug candidates computationally, dramatically accelerating discovery, e.g. identifying lead Ebola treatment candidates. Their AtomNet effectively taught itself college-level organic chemistry principles by analyzing vast data sets. Zymergen and Genomatica use ML and evolution to design novel microbes for producing better materials or chemicals. Earth observation. Planet Labs and Mapbox use ML to automatically analyze the petabytes of daily satellite imagery, detecting changes like new construction, deforestation, or reservoir levels globally, tasks impossible for human analysts. Mobility and robotics. Tesla's autopilot, Zoox's autonomous vehicles, SpaceX's autonomous rocket landings and drone ships, and Rethink Robotics Collaborative Factory, robots all rely heavily on deep learning for perception, navigation, and control. Visual understanding. Just Visual applies deep learning for visual similarity search in e-commerce and real-time object classification for autonomous robots. Cybersecurity. Silence leverages AI to predict and prevent novel malware attacks, proving far more effective than older signature-based antivirus solutions against sophisticated threats. Financial services. Avant and Prosper use ML to integrate diverse data sources and improve the accuracy and fairness of credit risk assessment. Future computing. Even quantum computing, as demonstrated by D-Wave Systems, a DFJ investment, shows promise in dramatically accelerating certain machine learning tasks, offering potentially million-fold speed-ups for optimization problems relevant to training AI, pushing intelligence to the deep edge. While much of the initial focus was on training massive models in the cloud, the next crucial phase involves deploying inference, the use of these trained models to make predictions out to the edge devices themselves. Think of the sensors and actuators embedded in our cars, phones, wearables, appliances, drones, and robots, the Internet of Things, IoT. Sending all raw sensor data, like continuous video streams, back to the cloud for processing is often impractical due to bandwidth limitations, latency concerns, privacy issues, and cost. The solution is to embed small, efficient inference engines, tiny brains, specialized neural network chips, directly alongside the sensors. Companies like Mythic AI, ADFJ Investment, and others are developing ultra-low power, low-cost chips, aiming for sub-dollar prices. capable of running sophisticated deep learning models locally. This transforms the IoT from a collection of dumb data conduits into a planetary scale sensory cortex. Edge devices gain local intelligence and reflexes. A security camera processes video locally, only sending alerts when it detects an anomaly. A fitness band becomes a personalized coach, analyzing sensor data on the wrist. A self-driving car makes instantaneous decisions using onboard AI without relying on a cloud connection. This distributed intelligence provides resilience, responsiveness, and preserves privacy. Much like our own bodies handle sensory input and reflexes locally, only passing summarized, relevant information to higher cognitive centers, the deep edge architecture allows the global network to scale intelligently. Creating more than we understand, the rise of machine learning marks a profound transition. We are moving from explicitly designing systems based on human understanding to creating learning processes whose outputs can surpass our own comprehension. These algorithms find patterns and correlations in high-dimensional data that are simply invisible to the human mind. The solutions they generate, whether a drug molecule, a control algorithm, or a translation model, often work exceptionally well, but how they work internally remains largely opaque, a recurring theme of evolved or learned complexity. Why do these deep learning networks map so effectively onto the real world? Recent theoretical work, like that by Lin and Tegmark, suggests a deep resonance. The hierarchical compositional structure favored by deep learning algorithms seems to mirror the fundamental structure of physics itself, characterized by principles like locality, symmetry, and low-order polynomial relationships. In essence, deep learning is computationally efficient at modeling our universe because its structure is inherently well-suited to the kind of data reality generates. Like we stand at the threshold of an era defined by intelligence inside nearly everything. We are building artificial brains, initially perhaps focused on sensory processing like vision and speech, much like an infant, but rapidly expanding in capability. We are creating systems that learn, adapt, and potentially achieve superhuman performance across countless domains. As Danny Hillis envisioned, we are creating tools that allow us to go beyond traditional engineering, enabling us to build systems whose complexity and capabilities exceed our own direct understanding. Machine learning is not just a new set of tools, it's a new way of thinking about creation itself. Chapter 12, Forging the Final Frontier, Space Exploration. For most of human history, space exploration has been the exclusive domain of superpowers, driven by national prestige and government funding. The idea of venture capital investing in space seemed, for decades, like science fiction itself. I've always been a space enthusiast. My office at DFJ slowly transformed into a sort of personal space museum filled with artifacts from the Apollo era, and I kept an open mind, reviewing any business plan even remotely related to space that crossed my desk. Yet, for the first 10 years of my career, from 1995 to around 2005, nothing seemed truly viable from an investment standpoint. The barriers felt insurmountable. Then something changed. The emergence of SpaceX, followed by companies like Planet Labs, signaled a paradigm shift. Suddenly, investing in space wasn't just a distant dream. It was becoming a tangible, exciting reality driven by the same entrepreneurial spirit and technological disruption transforming terrestrial industries. What catalyzed this shift? The single most important factor was the drastic reduction in the cost of access to space, primarily driven by SpaceX itself. Prior to Elon Musk's venture, launch costs were exorbitant, schedules notoriously unreliable, and pricing opaque, often seeming 10 times higher than necessary. For an entrepreneur, envisioning a business based on deploying assets in orbit, like a satellite constellation, this uncertainty was paralyzing. How could you build a business plan when the fundamental cost of reaching your operational domain was unknown and potentially prohibitive? SpaceX systematically attacked this cost barrier, applying a first principles Silicon Valley approach to rocket engineering. They focused relentlessly on efficiency, vertical integration, building most components in-house to control costs and timelines, and most radically, reusability. The successful landing of Falcon 9 first stages, first on land and then routinely on drone ships at sea, wasn't just a spectacular technical feat. It promised a fundamental change in launch economics, potentially lowering costs by another order of magnitude. Just as lower cost for fiber optic deployment and broadband unleashed a wave of innovative internet businesses, from streaming video to cloud services to ride-sharing apps dependent on ubiquitous connectivity, cheaper, more reliable access to orbit was unlocking a new frontier for startups. SpaceX, beyond launch to changing worlds. My own path to investing in SpaceX was intertwined with our investment in Tesla Motors. Through working with Elon on the Tesla board during its near-death experience in 2008, witnessing his incredible commitment firsthand, we came to understand the parallel audacity and rigorous engineering behind SpaceX. While the risks seemed immense, Elon himself initially gave both ventures perhaps only a 10% chance of success. The vision was undeniable. DFJ Growth subsequently made a significant investment. SpaceX's success since then has been nothing short of spectacular and certainly unprecedented for a private space venture. They rapidly captured a dominant share of the commercial launch market, building a backlog reportedly exceeding $8 billion, even before achieving the hard-won certification after some 700 audits to launch sensitive US military and intelligence satellites, a market potentially larger than the commercial one they already dominated. For years now, they've been profitable, a rarity for any aerospace company, let alone one tackling reusable rockets. They became the first private company to deliver cargo to the International Space Station, ISS, and are contracted to fly astronauts there soon, effectively becoming the backbone of the US human spaceflight program post-shuttle. Looking at their financials, one of my fellow board members, a seasoned industrialist accustomed to traditional businesses, famously described it as financial porn. The numbers were just that compellingly good. But SpaceX's mission transcends launch services. Elon's stated goal, the raison d'etre of the company, is far bolder: making humanity a multiplanetary species by establishing a self-sustaining city on Mars. This isn't just about planting a flag, it's about ensuring the long-term survival and flourishing of consciousness by creating a backup for humanity beyond Earth. He envisions transporting potentially 1 million people to Mars to build a permanent settlement. This audacious, purpose-driven mission is arguably SpaceX's greatest strategic asset. It captures the imagination, attracting the best and brightest engineering talent from around the world, people eager to work on something truly transformative, much like the Apollo program inspired a previous generation. This ability to recruit top talent, particularly the crucial software engineers needed for complex autonomous systems, like landing rockets or navigating spacecraft, provides an enduring competitive advantage. While the Mars colony might be decades away, perhaps feasible by 2035, according to Elon's estimates, the journey there involves developing technologies like fully reusable super heavy launch vehicles, Starship, and in-space refueling that will further revolutionize access to Earth orbit and enable entirely new types of space-based businesses in the interim. Planet Labs imaging the Earth daily. Just as cheaper launch enabled new satellite businesses, advances in mobile electronics, the relentless miniaturization and cost reduction driven by the smartphone revolution enabled entirely new types of satellites. Planet Labs, founded by a team of ex-NASA scientists, some of whom I first met fittingly launching hobby rockets in the desert, seized on this convergence. Their idea was radical. Instead of building a few large, exquisite, multi-billion-dollar imaging satellites, why not deploy hundreds or even thousands of small, relatively inexpensive satellites, doves, based largely on commercial off-the-shelf components? By flying these constellations in low Earth orbit, they could achieve something previously impossible, imaging the entire landmass of the Earth every single day. DFJ was Planet Labs' very first investor, providing seed funding even before incorporation, and we led their Series A round. Their progress has been remarkable. They achieved surprisingly early revenue traction, securing contracts exceeding their total venture funding, a rare feat for a capital-intensive startup. They leveraged SpaceX launches, among others, to deploy successive generations of their doves, demonstrating the powerful synergy between launch providers and satellite operators. The sheer volume of data generated by Planet Labs' daily global scan presents its own challenge and opportunity. It's simply too much imagery for humans to analyze manually. This necessitates the use of machine learning and computer vision algorithms to automatically detect changes, identify objects like ships, planes, or buildings, count features like cars and parking lots for retail analytics, and monitor dynamic processes like deforestation, agriculture yields, or glacier melt on a planetary scale. They're creating not just a data set, but an intelligent, queryable database of the physical world, updated daily.
Like SpaceX, Planet Labs has attracted exceptional talent, motivated by the mission of using space-based insights for global good, monitoring environmental change, improving disaster response, enabling more efficient agriculture, and providing transparency.
The broader new space ecosystem. SpaceX and Planet Labs are prominent examples, but they represent a much broader trend. Companies like Spire are building constellations for weather and maritime tracking. Ventures like OneWeb, backed by Virgin and Qualcomm, and SpaceX's own Starlink project aim to provide global broadband internet access via thousands of low-orbit satellites, potentially connecting the billions currently without high-speed access and disrupting the terrestrial telecom industry. This new space ecosystem thrives on the interplay between cheaper launch, smaller and more capable satellites enabled by terrestrial electronics trends, and sophisticated software, particularly AI/ML, for both satellite operations and data analysis. The venture opportunities are shifting. While launch was the initial bottleneck, the greatest value creation may ultimately lie in the applications layer, the software and services built on top of the space-based data and infrastructure. Just as the value of the internet shifted from ISPs and backbone providers to application companies like Google, Facebook, and countless others, a similar evolution seems likely in the commercial space domain. My personal passion for rocketry, a hobby I share with my sons involving launching increasingly sophisticated amateur rockets, sometimes resulting in spectacular, rapid, unscheduled disassemblies, provides a visceral connection to this field. Building rockets, simulating their flights, integrating sensors and video. These hands-on experiences reinforce the technical challenges and the thrill of pushing boundaries, whether it's achieving Mach 2.5 in the Black Rock Desert or contemplating commercial voyages to Mars. The notion that private enterprise, fueled by venture capital and driven by visionary entrepreneurs like Elon Musk and the Planet Labs founders, could now tackle challenges previously reserved for nation states is profoundly exciting. Silicon Valley's ethos, embracing big risks, learning from failure, preferably successful failures, iterating quickly, and leveraging software and Moore's law, is proving remarkably effective when applied to the final frontier. While colonizing Mars remains a long-term ambition, the commercialization of space is happening now, creating tangible businesses and laying the foundation for a future where humanity's reach extends far beyond Earth. Chapter 13, the Robocar Revolution and the Future of Voice. Two fundamental shifts in how we interact with technology and the physical world are poised to reshape our daily lives in the coming years. The transition to autonomous electric vehicles and the resurgence of voice as a primary computing interface. Both are driven by the convergence of sensor technology, connectivity, and crucially, the rapid advancements in machine learning and artificial intelligence. The inevitable electric, autonomous future for vehicles. Back in 2012, I argued at the Churchill Club that the transition of all vehicles to electric drivetrains was inevitable and that this inevitability would become clear within 5 years. While the complete replacement of the world's billion-plus internal combustion engine cars certainly wouldn't happen in that time frame, the mindset shift felt achievable. The fundamental advantages of electric propulsion were simply too compelling. Electric motors are vastly more efficient, upwards of 88% versus approximately 20% for gasoline engines, translating directly to lower energy costs. They offer instantaneous torque, resulting in exhilarating acceleration, as anyone who has driven a Tesla can attest. 0 to 60 miles per hour faster than many supercars. They require significantly less maintenance due to having far fewer moving parts. And of course, they produce zero tailpipe emissions, offering a clear path away from our dependence on fossil fuels, which cost the US alone roughly $2 billion per day for oil, even before accounting for indirect economic and military costs, and towards addressing climate change. Even if one insisted on burning biofuels, doing so in a large, efficient central power plant to generate electricity for cars is more efficient than burning it in millions of small, inefficient car engines. The key wasn't just technical superiority, it was about creating desirable products. Tesla Motors proved that electric cars didn't need to be compromised, sensible econoboxes. They could be the safest cars ever tested, offer more interior and storage space than comparable gasoline cars, thanks to the packaging advantages of batteries and small motors, outperform high-end sports cars, and possess stunning aesthetics. The total cost of ownership could already be lower than conventional vehicles when factoring in fuel and maintenance savings. With dozens of electric models emerging from nearly every major manufacturer, the transition felt well underway. Layered onto this electric revolution is the equally profound shift towards autonomous driving. When I revisited this topic at the Churchill Club in 2015, the focus shifted to the rise of the robocars. My prediction then was that by 2020, the inevitability of autonomous driving would no longer be debated because many of us would have experienced its convenience and efficiency firsthand, likely through early deployments in urban ride-sharing services. The pace of progress in autonomous technology, fueled largely by deep learning breakthroughs in perception and navigation, was accelerating even faster than I had anticipated. What seemed 10 years away only a few years prior began to feel like it was only 3 years away. While regulatory approval remains a significant variable, requiring society and governments to grapple with complex ethical and liability questions, the core technology for full self-driving capability seemed on track to be essentially solved within a very near time frame. Tesla's Autopilot, released in public beta, offered a tangible glimpse, albeit still requiring driver supervision, of this highway driving future. The potential benefits are immense. Autonomous vehicles promise a drastic reduction, perhaps greater than 90%, in accidents and fatalities, currently 1.2 million deaths globally per year. They can optimize traffic flow, dramatically reducing congestion and commute times. The average American spends nearly an hour per day commuting. They free up drivers' time for productivity, entertainment, or rest. The experience of riding in one is fundamentally different. Without the need to anticipate abrupt maneuvers, the ride can be perfectly smooth, eliminating motion sickness and enabling comfortable work or relaxation. Autonomous operation enables entirely new service models like the Robo-Uber or Robo-Lyft. Studies suggested that a relatively small fleet of on-demand autonomous vehicles could serve urban transportation needs with wait times under a minute at a significantly lower cost per mile than current taxis, ride-sharing, or even mass transit in many areas. This efficiency would also reshape our cities, drastically reducing the need for parking. Urban land dedicated to parking could be repurposed, as vehicles could drop off passengers and either reposition themselves for the next ride or park remotely in optimized depots. The journey towards full autonomy would likely proceed in stages. First, highway autopilot, then low-speed urban mobility services, eventually leading to vehicles capable of handling all conditions without human intervention. But the core intelligence, the deep learning systems processing sensor data and making driving decisions, has to run locally on the vehicle. While cloud connectivity is useful for updates, mapping, and fleet coordination, split-second safety decisions cannot rely on remote processing. This necessitates powerful, efficient onboard computers, essentially pushing AI to the deep edge, a topic we explored earlier. Just as electric drive simplifies the mechanical complexity of a car, autonomy simplifies the human complexity of driving. For many, particularly the young who might never need a driver's license and the elderly or disabled who could regain mobility, the freedom offered by autonomous vehicles will be transformative. We will likely look back at the era of human-driven cars with its tragic toll and inefficiencies as a primitive period we were glad to leave behind. The revival of voice, computing's next interface. Just as autonomy promises to change how we move through the world, voice is poised to fundamentally change how we interact with the burgeoning world of computation around us. For decades, we interacted with computers primarily through keyboards and mice, then through touchscreens on our smartphones, interfaces that, while effective, required direct physical manipulation and visual attention. In 2017, I predicted the revival of voice as the next major user interface paradigm shift, driven again by deep learning breakthroughs in speech recognition and natural language understanding, coupled with ultra-low power chips capable of enabling always-on listening in virtually any device. The accuracy of speech recognition had improved dramatically. Error rates, which were north of 20% just a few years prior, leading to the frustrating experience many had with early voice assistants, had plummeted to around 5%, roughly equivalent to human accuracy in transcription. Studies showed we could already dictate text about 3 times faster than typing on a physical keyboard and 5 times faster than thumb typing on glass. Voice was simply becoming a faster, more natural input method. Products like Amazon's Alexa and Google Home provided the first mainstream glimpse of this future. These devices, residing ambiently in our homes, allowed for hands-free interaction to play music, get information, control smart home devices, and more. Their rapid adoption, Alexa, reaching 10% of US homes and growing 500% year over year at the time, and the proliferation of integrations, controlling lights, thermostats, appliances, signaled a significant shift. Apple and Facebook were also entering the fray with competing smart speaker products, but this was just the beginning. The real potential lay beyond simple command and response interactions, interactive voice response. The next step was towards continuous, contextual, personalized interaction. This requires the AI to have memory, to understand conversational history, user preferences, and the surrounding environment. Deep learning research, particularly in areas like recurrent neural networks, RNNs, and transformers, was making rapid progress here. Furthermore, specialized hardware from companies like Vesper and Mythic AI was enabling this intelligence to run locally, efficiently, and with minimal power consumption, consuming microwatts, not milliwatts. This meant voice interfaces wouldn't be confined to smart speakers plugged into the wall. They could be embedded everywhere, in your Fitbit becoming a fitness coach, in your earbuds offering real-time translation, in your appliances offering guidance, even in tiny sensors responding to environmental triggers. A device the size of a shirt button could soon contain a sophisticated, always-on voice AI. This deep edge deployment addressed privacy concerns. Processing could happen locally without sending raw audio to the cloud, and enabled offline functionality. The multi-touch screen cracked the code for the smartphone. Voice, powered by local AI, promised to vastly broaden the compute fabric of the world, making interaction seamless and ubiquitous. Critically, voice offered a path to bridge the digital divide in a different way. For billions around the globe, children too young to read or type, illiterate adults, or elderly individuals uncomfortable with complex visual interfaces, voice represents the most natural and accessible means of interacting with computing resources. As access to online education, healthcare, and economic opportunities expands globally, perhaps via satellite broadband, as discussed earlier, voice interaction could become the primary modality for a majority of the world's population. Just as the graphical user interface and the mouse revolutionized personal computing, and the touchscreen defined the mobile era, voice, supercharged by artificial intelligence running both in the cloud and locally at the edge, seems poised to define the next epoch of human-computer interaction, making technology fade into the background, becoming an ambient, natural extension of our own intentions. Part 4, the investor's mindset and the entrepreneurial spirit, cross-cutting themes. Beyond the specific technologies and market shifts explored in the preceding sections lies the crucial human element, the mindset required to navigate, shape, and invest in this era of relentless change. Success in transforming industries or building enduring companies isn't solely determined by technical brilliance or market timing. It's deeply intertwined with the perspectives we adopt, the passions that drive us, and the processes we employ to learn and adapt. This final part steps back to reflect on these cross-cutting themes that underpin sustained innovation and impact, peering through the venture capitalist lens to understand how we attempt to find patterns amidst the chaos and why betting on initially crazy ideas is often essential. Exploring the undeniable power of passion and purpose-driven missions as exemplified by visionary leaders like Steve Jobs and Elon Musk, examining the vital importance of cultivating a childlike mind, fostering curiosity, play, and eclectic lifelong learning to maintain the cognitive agility needed to surf the accelerating waves of change, and ultimately, considering the personal journey of finding one's calling, building enduring systems through habits, and pursuing the universal human quest for meaning, legacy, and that sublime satisfaction of symbolic immortality. How we approach the future profoundly shapes the future we collectively create. Chapter 14, The Venture Capitalist Lens, Finding Patterns in Chaos. Venture capital, at its core, is the business of investing in the future, specifically in the disruptive potential of new ideas and the passionate entrepreneurs who champion them. It's a profession that demands a unique blend of analytical rigor, intuition, technological understanding, psychological insight, and perhaps above all, an unwavering optimism about the power of innovation to reshape the world. Our role at DFJ and my personal passion is to surf the frontiers of the unknown, placing bets on those founder-led, mission-driven companies poised to create not just incremental improvements, but entirely new industries or paradigms. From the outside, the process might seem chaotic, a frantic search for needles in an ever-expanding haystack of business plans. We review thousands of proposals each year, perhaps 5,000 to 10,000 across our network, yet typically invest in only a small fraction, maybe 15 to 20 companies annually per fund. How do we navigate this torrent of ideas and attempt to identify the fledgling ventures that might one day become the next Hotmail, Skype, Tesla, or SpaceX? It requires a specific lens, a way of seeing patterns and potential amidst the uncertainty and noise. Embracing disruption and the crazy idea. The foundational principle is the pursuit of disruption. As I've emphasized throughout, startups rarely thrive in stable, predictable markets. Those environments favor incumbents, the large companies that get larger through inertia and economies of scale. Startups with everything stacked against them, undercapitalization, no brand recognition, fledgling teams need something to change the rules of the game. That change agent is disruption, which can stem from various sources. Technological breakthroughs like the internet or machine learning, market turmoil like the 2008 financial crisis that ironically created openings for electric vehicle companies, deregulation, new channels of distribution, or shifts in consumer behavior. Our job is to identify these disruptive waves early, often before they are widely recognized, and back the entrepreneurs best positioned to ride them. This inherently means investing in ideas that often seem crazy at the outset. If an idea is universally regarded as good by everyone you ask, it's likely already part of the mainstream consensus, perhaps an incremental improvement, but probably not something truly game-changing or disruptive enough to generate the massive returns venture capital requires. The companies that genuinely change the world, the Googles, eBays, Skypes, are frequently ridiculed or dismissed by the majority of investors in their early days, and Hotmail was famously rejected by over 20 venture firms before DFJ provided seed funding. This observation led us to develop a somewhat counterintuitive investment decision process at DFJ. We consciously decided not to strive for consensus among the partners. Instead, we architected our process to allow a passionate minority to outweigh a skeptical majority. A couple of partners who deeply believe in a deal, who see the disruptive potential others might miss, can champion an investment even if most other partners vote against it. Why? because history taught us that groundbreaking ideas rarely garner universal early acclaim. That brilliant, unconventional entrepreneur often needs just one or two believers to get started. The ideal ratio, perhaps half-jokingly, feels like one champion for every 10 detractors. As long as that champion isn't the village idiot, you might be onto something truly special. This requires humility and a willingness to challenge our own biases. We must constantly ask ourselves if we are taking enough risk, if we are genuinely open to ideas that seem outlandish today but might define the future. The venture capitalist's worst sin isn't necessarily backing a company that fails. Failure is an inherent part of the high-risk equation. But missing the opportunity to back a company that succeeds spectacularly because the idea initially seemed too strange or uncomfortable. Pattern recognition and thematic investing. While embracing the unconventional is crucial, effective venture investing isn't random guesswork. It involves intense pattern recognition. Over time, by seeing thousands of pitches, tracking technological advancements, and observing market shifts, certain patterns and themes emerge. Technology trajectories, understanding the deep currents of technological change, like the multi-paradigm progression of Moore's law or the convergence of info-bio-nano, provides a framework for anticipating future capabilities and the disruptions they might enable. Recognizing that lab sciences inevitably become information sciences, for example, points towards opportunities driven by simulation and data analysis across diverse fields. Business model innovation. Technology often enables entirely new ways of doing business. Viral marketing, leveraging network effects for customer acquisition without traditional marketing spend, Hotmail, Skype, was one such pattern. The shift from selling software licenses to offering software as a service SaaS hosted online was another. Recognizing these emergent models early allows us to spot companies architected for the future, not the past. Horizontalization, watching industries transition from vertically integrated stacks, like the old IBM mainframe model or traditional retail, to specialized horizontal layers, like the Intel/Microsoft PC ecosystem or the disaggregated e-commerce value chain, reveals where power and value are likely to accrue. We look for companies aiming to dominate these emerging horizontal layers or the critical interfaces between them. People patterns. Ultimately, venture capital is a bet on people. We look for passionate, driven entrepreneurs with hallucinogenic optimism, resilience, integrity, and the ability to attract top talent. The dynamic duo pattern, a complementary pair of founders, often bridging technical and business skills, frequently correlates with success, fostering diverse thinking from the start. We also look for that crucial combination of intense self-confidence coupled with the humility to listen, learn, and adapt. Identifying these patterns isn't about applying rigid formulas. It's about developing an intuition honed through constant exposure and learning. It's about seeing the connections between disparate fields, how a breakthrough in low-power chips enables ambient voice interfaces, or how DNA synthesis enables new approaches to material science. The VC's role beyond capital. While providing capital is the fundamental function, the role of an early-stage VC, particularly one focused on disruptive technologies, extends far beyond just writing checks. We live vicariously through the successes and setbacks of our portfolio companies. Our goal is to be more than just investors. We strive to be partners, coaches, mentors, and cheerleaders for the entrepreneurs we back. This involves strategic sounding board, helping founders refine their vision, challenge assumptions, and navigate strategic inflection points. Network access, leveraging our connections to recruit key executives, secure crucial partnerships, and attract follow-on funding. Asking, who do you need to meet, is often more valuable than simply offering advice. Market insight, sharing patterns and perspectives gleaned from across our portfolio and the broader technology landscape. Building resilience, supporting entrepreneurs through the inevitable tough times, offering perspective gleaned from having seen this movie before during previous market cycles or technology shifts. Crucially, however, it's vital to remember that we are not the operators. The entrepreneurs build the companies. They deserve the credit. Our role is supportive, strategic, and often catalytic, but we are board members, not managers. Confusing this distinction can be detrimental to both the VC and the company. Navigating the future, investing at the frontiers means constantly operating outside one's comfort zone. If everyone else is already investing heavily in a sector, it's likely becoming passé from an early-stage disruptive perspective. The real excitement lies in exploring nascent fields like synthetic biology, quantum computing, advanced AI, or commercial space before they become mainstream trends. It requires intellectual curiosity, a willingness to learn continuously across diverse disciplines, and the fortitude to make bets based on a conviction about the future that might not yet be reflected in current market data or expert consensus. The accelerating pace of change makes this task both more challenging and more exhilarating. The potential for transformative breakthroughs feels greater than ever, but the uncertainty is also higher. Forecasting becomes less reliable, demanding greater adaptability and a portfolio approach that acknowledges the inherent unpredictability of the future, embracing the possibility of black swans. Ultimately, the venture capitalist's lens is one focused on potential, on the belief that small teams with bold ideas, powered by exponential technological progress, can indeed change the world. It's a privilege to witness this process firsthand, to learn from brilliant minds, pushing the boundaries of possibility, and to play a small role in helping forge the future. Chapter 15, The Power of Passion, Lessons from Jobs and Musk. Venture capital often focuses on markets, technology, and business models, but at the heart of every great startup, every world-changing enterprise lies something less tangible yet utterly essential: passion. It's the fuel that drives entrepreneurs through daunting challenges, the infectious enthusiasm that rallies teams to achieve the seemingly impossible, and the deep conviction that resonates with customers and partners. Observing two of the most iconic and impactful entrepreneurs of our time, Steve Jobs and Elon Musk, offers powerful insights into the nature and importance of this driving force. Steve Jobs, a parable of passion and parsimony. Steve Jobs' passion wasn't just directed at his products. It was an intense, almost visceral love for them. His enthusiasm was palpable, whether in a one-on-one recruiting pitch or captivating thousands from an auditorium stage. It felt deeply authentic, because his career arc resembled a Shakespearean sonnet filled with youthful creation, tragic exile, and ultimately triumphant reunion with his first love, Apple. I witnessed this firsthand during his years at Next, the company he founded after being forced out of Apple. Those years felt like torture for him and estrangement. Whenever we spoke, whether on walks or brief hallway encounters, the conversation inevitably steered towards a plaintive question. What should Apple do? His answer was always the same: Apple should buy Next. It seemed outrageous then. What Apple CEO would invite Jobs back and expect to keep their job? Yet for Steve, it was the only logical path back home. The Macintosh sitting on his desk at Next with its striped Apple logo physically gouged out was a poignant memento of that anguish. While the Next Step operating system and tools like Interface Builder were technically beautiful, they were aimed at the enterprise IT market, a domain Jobs seemed to view as pedestrian. He longed for the masses, for the magic of consumer connection. He could still masterfully sell the Next vision, relating stories of MCI saving time and money, even persuading market research firms to create a new PC workstation category just so Next could claim market leadership. His reality distortion field remained potent. Sun Microsystems famously had a policy not to agree to contracts while Steve was in the room, needing physical distance to escape the mesmerizing effect. But fundamentally, he seemed to be sleepwalking, deeply agitated by Apple's struggles reported constantly in the press as beleaguered. He later reflected on how physically painful that period was. When the miracle finally happened and Apple acquired Next, Jobs was reborn. That fire, that intense passion, returned with full force. Bill Gates, reflecting on Jobs' later career, marveled at this enduring quality. Most people lose that fire in the belly as they age, except Steve Jobs. He still had it, and he just kept going. He had hit after hit. This passion manifested not just in his presentations, but deeply in his design philosophy, characterized by an almost fanatical parsimony, a drive towards simplicity and elegance. Jobs was the master architect of Apple's aesthetic. He waged a war on buttons and clutter, from the original single-button mouse to the minimalist iPhone interface. He aimed to dematerialize the user interface, shifting complexity from hardware to the more flexible and lucrative domain of software and services, reducing the physical object to a mere vessel for code long before others thought possible. And this wasn't just a business strategy. It reflected his personal life: sparse home furnishings, his trademark simple attire. Visual noise, imperfection seemed to cause him visceral agitation. When I once asked him to sign my Apple extended keyboard, already bearing Woz's signature, he recoiled. "This keyboard represents everything about Apple that I hate. It's a battleship. Why does it have all these keys do you use? This F1 key?" He proceeded to pry off the function keys with his car keys, declaring, "I'm changing the world, one keyboard at a time." His attention to detail was legendary, extending to the precise Pantone colors on an org chart, the wood flooring at Next headquarters, even the layout of the outdoor sprinkler system. A distorted color on a slide was, to his senses, like a horribly off-key concerto. His intense focus extended to people, often polarizing towards extremes. The infamous hero shithead roller coaster experienced by many executives who worked for him. Yet this same intensity attracted A-plus talent, motivating teams to perform beyond their perceived limits, creating a harmony and focus many might never experience elsewhere. He remains my personal archetype for the charismatic visionary leader whose passion became inextricably woven into the fabric of his company. Elon Musk, engineering vision with planetary scope. While Jobs' passion was deeply focused on product elegance and user experience within the computing and consumer electronics sphere, Elon Musk embodies a different, though equally intense, form of visionary drive. Where Jobs was a master marketer and designer without a deep engineering background, Elon combines his visionary scope with a rigorous first principles engineering mindset. As I remarked in comparing them, Elon is arguably more capable in the sense that his passions and abilities span multiple, vastly different and incredibly complex industries: software, PayPal; automotive, Tesla; aerospace, SpaceX; and energy, Solar City, Tesla Energy. Elon's motivation seems less focused on perfecting a single product category and more on tackling fundamental challenges threatening humanity's future or limiting its potential. His selection of focus areas back in college, the internet, sustainable energy, multiplanetary life, with genetics and AI noted as powerful but potentially double-edged swords, reveals a systems-level thinking about civilizational trajectories. His approach often starts with identifying a major roadblock or inefficiency: the exorbitant cost of space launch, the unsustainable trajectory of fossil fuels, and applying fundamental physics and economic principles to engineer a dramatically better solution from the ground up. The drive isn't just about building a successful company. It's often about catalyzing a wholesale shift in an entire industry or global system. As Elon noted when we spoke at Stanford's Future Fest, the original goal for what became SpaceX wasn't even to start a company, but to reignite public and governmental interest in Mars exploration by executing a dramatic stunt, sending a small greenhouse to the planet. When the cost of buying rockets proved prohibitive, the logical, albeit audacious step was to build a far cheaper, reusable one. Similarly, Tesla's mission isn't just to sell electric cars, but explicitly to accelerate the advent of sustainable transport. This larger purpose informs decisions like open sourcing patents, aiming to lift the entire industry rather than just optimizing Tesla's near-term competitive position. This purpose-driven approach, as Elon acknowledged, is incredibly powerful for attracting the best talent. Engineers, scientists, and builders are drawn to missions that feel larger than just commercial success. Missions aimed at securing a better future for humanity or expanding its horizons. When employees believe they are part of something truly meaningful, addressing fundamental planetary challenges, It unlocks discretionary effort and resilience far beyond what financial incentives alone can achieve. While facing setbacks like SpaceX enduring 3 launch failures before its critical last-ditch 4th attempt succeeded, or Tesla navigating the brink of bankruptcy in 2008, Elon's response highlights both the pain and the necessary leadership. He admitted that failures feel terrible, like a punch in the gut, yet the imperative is to rally the team, learn from the often numerous ways things can go wrong, and push forward relentlessly toward the larger goal. His preference expressed after the Grasshopper RUD, rapid unscheduled disassembly, we witnessed maybe to learn from success, but the reality, especially in pioneering fields like rocketry, is that failure is an unavoidable, albeit painful, part of the iterative learning process inherent in tackling profoundly difficult challenges. The common thread, belief and execution. Despite their different styles and domains, Jobs, the product visionary, refining human-computer interaction, Musk, the systems engineer tackling planetary scale challenges, both demonstrate the immense power of unwavering passion coupled with relentless execution. They possessed an ability to envision a dramatically different future, articulate it in a way that inspires intense loyalty and effort, and navigate incredible obstacles to make that vision manifest. They show that while intellect, strategy, and resources are necessary, it is often the irrational commitment born of deep passion that ultimately separates incremental progress from world-changing breakthroughs. For entrepreneurs aiming to make a dent in the universe, or for investors looking to back them, understanding this power of passion is perhaps the most vital lesson of all. Chapter 16, Cultivating the Childlike Mind, Play, Curiosity, and Lifelong Learning. Our conventional systems, education, workplaces often inadvertently plunge us into deep mental ruts. They reward the development of specific competencies, encouraging us to acquire deep domain expertise. While valuable, this focus can stifle the very qualities that underpin true creativity and breakthrough innovation: curiosity, open-mindedness, a willingness to ask stupid questions, and the embrace of play. To truly thrive in an era of accelerating change, and indeed to combat the natural cognitive decline that accompanies aging, we need to actively cultivate and celebrate what I call the childlike mind. Why childlike? It's not about promoting recklessness or abandoning wisdom, though a touch of calculated immaturity can sometimes help. Rather, it's about recognizing the remarkable learning capabilities inherent in early childhood. As Alison Gopnik eloquently argued in The Scientist in the Crib, babies are just plain smarter than we are, at least if being smart means being able to learn something new. They think, draw conclusions, make predictions, look for explanations, and even do experiments. In fact, scientists are successful precisely because they emulate what children do naturally. Children are amazing learning machines, largely unburdened by the internal voice of reason, collective cynicism, or the paralyzing fear of failure that so often hinders adult exploration. Think about the greatest scientific minds: Newton, Einstein, Feynman, Watson. Their breakthroughs often stemmed from a playful, almost naive approach. Newton famously described himself as feeling only like a boy playing on the seashore. Einstein visualized relativity through mental cartoons of trains and clocks, pondering falling off a roof. He later remarked, "All our science, measured against reality, is primitive and childlike." Feynman was renowned for his ability to ignore preconceptions and approach problems with fresh eyes, ignoring what everyone else thinks and saying, "Sure, now what have we got here?" James Watson, co-discoverer of the DNA double helix, credited playful tinkering with models and doodling as key to his insight. A sharp mind intertwined with a certain childlike innocence. This pattern extends across fields. Howard Gardner, studying the lives of Freud, Picasso, Stravinsky, Elliot Gandhi, and Martha Graham, found a distinct childlike component in each of their creative breakthroughs. This youthful cognitive prowess seems linked to the brain's underlying architecture. Neurologically, we reach peak cognitive potential quite early. Much of the brain's power derives from its massive synaptic interconnectivity. At around age 2 to 3, a child possesses roughly 10 times the number of synapses and burns twice the cerebral energy compared to an adult. From that peak, it appears to be a gradual downhill slope. Longitudinal studies show that the rate of cognitive decline we experience in our 40s is statistically similar to that of a healthy 80-year-old. We just notice the accumulated deficit more acutely later in life. Does this mean cognitive decline is an immutable fate? Absolutely not. For a long time, the common wisdom held that we were born with a fixed number of neurons that gradually died off. We now know this is emphatically wrong. The phenomenon of neuroplasticity demonstrates that our brains retain the capacity to rewire themselves throughout life. New neurons are born, and crucially, new synaptic connections are constantly formed and pruned based on usage. We can influence the rate and direction of this rewiring. The key is mental exercise. Just as we understand the need for physical exercise to maintain physical fitness, we must recognize the necessity of mental exercise to maintain cognitive fitness and agility. As we extend human lifespans, our brains, perhaps not evolutionarily selected for such longevity, become a weak link. We will likely look back and marvel that we ever thought we could stay mentally fit without deliberate mental exercise. But what constitutes effective mental exercise? Unlike physical exercise, which is often repetitive, true mental exercise is eclectic. It involves getting out of those comfortable mental ruts fostered by specialized careers and academic disciplines. It means embracing novelty, challenging existing assumptions, learning new skills, asking naive questions, and rekindling the creativity many of us left behind in childhood. It requires actively resisting the gravitational pull towards self-reinforcing competencies and domain expertise, and instead seeking diversity in thought and experience. How can we do this? Embrace play. Find pursuits outside your professional routine that engage your mind in different ways. It could be anything. Model rocketry, a personal favorite that helps preserve my own childlike mind. Novel writing, wood carving, learning a musical instrument, exploring abstract mathematics, engaging in strategic games. Michael Schrage insightfully noted that the opposite of play isn't work, but reality. Play allows for riskless competition between speculative choices. Treat your tools as toys and your toys as tools. At Adio's Play Dates, David Kelly and Don Norman highlighted how fear kills creativity, contrasting playful exploration on a floor-level balance beam with rigid caution when the same beam is suspended high up. We need safe spaces for mental exploration. Dr. Stuart Brown's work emphasized play's deep biological roots. Warm-blooded animals play, reptiles don't, and its link to mental health, noting its absence in the histories of violent individuals. Play isn't frivolous, it's essential. Pursue hobbies and lifelong learning. Make a determined effort to learn new things continually. This might involve formal re-education, a booming market for a reason, exploring adjacent fields, or simply diving into unfamiliar subjects through reading or conversation. Engage with people who think differently. At DFJ, we intentionally cultivate cognitive diversity in our team, believing that the interaction of divergent perspectives leads to better decisions than a room full of like-minded experts. Ask stupid questions. Resist the pressure to always appear knowledgeable within your domain. True learning often starts with admitting ignorance and asking fundamental, perhaps naive questions that challenge implicit assumptions. Cultivate curiosity. Maintain a sense of wonder about the world. Pay attention to anomalies and unexpected results. Be willing to be surprised. For students embarking on their college journey, this is a particularly crucial time. College should further open your field of view, not just narrow it towards a specific major. Embrace something new, explore different disciplines, especially the interstices between them, as that's where much disruptive innovation occurs. Think bioengineering. Resist the urge to immediately optimize for a career track. There will be plenty of time for execution later. Rediscover the childlike rush of myriad horizons opening anew. Lifelong learning isn't just an abstract ideal, it's a practical necessity for maintaining cognitive function and a vital ingredient for innovation in a rapidly changing world. By celebrating curiosity, embracing play, seeking out novelty, and valuing the eclectic over the merely expert, we can combat cognitive decline, foster creativity, and keep the most powerful learning engine we possess, our own brain, agile, adaptive, and fit for the challenges and opportunities ahead. As Einstein suggested, even though our science, measured against reality, is primitive and childlike, it remains the most precious thing we have. Perhaps embracing that childlike perspective is key to advancing it further. Chapter 17, Finding Your Calling, Habits, Destiny, and Symbolic Immortality. As we navigate our lives from the wide-open potential of youth to the focused paths of adulthood, there's a universal quest to find our calling, to do something meaningful, to leave a mark on the world. For students graduating poised at the precipice of independence and collegiate life, this journey is just beginning, filled with myriad horizons. Yet there's a cautionary observation, eloquently phrased by Henry Kissinger in his undergraduate thesis, no less. As adults, we often look back and realize that all the myriad potentials that you envisioned as a child, your life has tracked a path of progressive narrowing. My hope, expressed to graduating classes at my own alma mater, St. Mark's, is that this won't be your fate. College, ideally, should further open your field of view. The tree branches again, offering a renewed, childlike rush of possibility. Embrace something new, explore the world, especially if you think you already know your path. There will be plenty of time to iterate and execute as you age. My own career path certainly hasn't followed a straight line. From a computer programming hobbyist to a chip designer at HP, then a management consultant, a product marketing intern at Apple and Next, and finally a venture capitalist investing across wildly different technological frontiers. The internet, nanotech, cleantech, synthetic biology, it sometimes feels like my trajectory has attention deficit disorder. Had I stopped at any of those earlier branches, I might never have found my true calling. That moment when fortune figuratively taps you on the shoulder, allowing you to do something special. Finding that calling in life is priceless. But how does one find it amidst the overwhelming choices and the pressures that tend to push us into narrower, predefined channels? While discovering your ultimate passion might involve serendipity and exploration, building a fulfilling and successful life often hinges less on grand, distant goals and more on the systems and habits you cultivate day to day. There's a common, perhaps misplaced, obsession with goals. We study the goals of our heroes, hoping to emulate their success. But consider any competitive endeavor, a sport, a business venture. The losers often have the exact same goals as the winners. Focusing solely on the goals of the successful introduces a sample selection bias. We don't interview the losers about their aspirations. As James Clear aptly summarized, you do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. Elon Musk deeply believes this. The process of innovation is ultimately more important than any single product of innovation. It's why Tesla open-sourced its patents, prioritizing the building of a continuous innovation engine over protecting past creations. Similarly, focusing only on life's goalpost destinations can make happiness elusive. The journey itself, the daily acts shaped by habits and systems, is where the reward lies. Your identity follows from these systems. Are you a runner, a lifelong learner, a caring friend, a problem solver? These daily actions define who you are far more than the trophies you might collect. As you establish your independence, consider carefully. Will you start each day with exercise, stay sober, read challenging books, or watch screens? These simple choices, compounded over years, make all the difference in professional advancement, health, and happiness. This principle of building strong foundations extends to building strong companies. The most enduring businesses Companies like Hewlett-Packard or Microsoft were often forged during challenging economic times. Downturns necessitate a focus on customers over investors, breed cultures of frugality, and embed resilience into the corporate DNA. It's like parenting. Scarcity fosters resourcefulness and a focus on creating real value. Starting a business often works best in a recession precisely because it forces this focus on fundamentals, on building robust systems rather than chasing easy capital. Just as important as individual systems are the dynamics of partnership. Looking back at great founding stories, Jobs and Wozniak at Apple, Ellison and Miner at Oracle, Sabir and Jack at Hotmail, the dynamic duo emerges as a recurring pattern. Often these pairs represent a blend of complementary skills, perhaps the technical visionary and the business marketing expert, but the benefit transcends mere skill diversification. Having two distinct, respected leaders at the top can foster a culture of diverse perspectives and mutual respect throughout the organization. A company led by a single dominant personality risks creating a monoculture. Potentially strong initially, but often brittle and resistant to the adaptation necessary for long-term survival. A culture built on acknowledging different strengths from the outset is often more resilient and capable of navigating change. Finding your Robin can be as crucial as honing your own Batman abilities. This emphasis on robust foundations, personal habits, strong partnerships, adaptive processes is critical because the environment we operate in is one of constant, accelerating change. As technology relentlessly disrupts industries and compresses timeframes, the ability to learn, adapt, and collaborate becomes paramount. Individuals, companies, even nations must embrace lifelong learning, not just for enlightenment, but as an economic imperative. The skills needed tomorrow might be vastly different from those valued today. So, where does this leave us on the larger quest for meaning? What drives the intense passion we see in entrepreneurs like Jobs and Musk, or the dedication of scientists pushing the frontiers of knowledge? I believe it connects to a universal human desire, the striving for symbolic immortality. We all yearn, consciously or unconsciously, to leave something significant behind after our brief time on Earth. Entrepreneurs often find this by creating companies that outlast them, sometimes literally carrying their names forward like Hewlett and Packard. Artists create enduring works. Philanthropists perform lasting acts of kindness. Many find profound expression in their children and future generations. Our teachers experience a version of this through the impact they have on their students' lives. And for some, of course, it finds expression in faith and the belief in an afterlife. It's a powerful, fundamental human drive. My hope, particularly for those just starting their adult journey, is that you cultivate reservoirs of self-confidence that allow you to be humble, that you learn enough to realize you must never stop learning, that you recognize we are entering an incredible intellectual renaissance woven across the sciences, empowering individuals with good ideas as never before. Schools are merely stepping stones on this path of lifelong learning. So skip forward on your future path with playful curiosity. Consider your potential destiny on this planet as something grand. Strive to change the world for the better, whether through the companies you build, the knowledge you create, the systems you improve, or the people you nurture. Aim to leave a meaningful legacy. In doing so, you will not only find success and satisfaction in the journey itself, but also that sublime fulfillment that comes from achieving a measure of symbolic immortality. Conclusion, forging the future. As we've journeyed through these reflections spanning roughly a quarter century of technological change, from the dial-up days of the early internet to the dawn of applied AI and commercial spaceflight, a dominant theme emerges. The future belongs to the disruptors, the entrepreneurs, and those who embrace the accelerating pace of innovation with optimism and a willingness to learn. The engine driving this relentless transformation is technology itself, compounding upon its own advances in a cycle epitomized by Moore's law, but echoing across biology, materials, science, energy, and computation. This acceleration isn't slowing down. If anything, the convergence of formerly discrete domains like infotech, biotech, and nanotech, this nexus of the sciences promises to further quicken the pace. We stand in an era where the progress achieved in the next 2 decades might rival that of the entire preceding century. While this can induce a sense of future shock, shortening our forecast horizons and challenging societal adaptation, it also creates unprecedented opportunities. For the entrepreneur, this constant disruption is the fertile ground from which new ventures spring. Stability favors incumbents, but change creates openings for the agile, the bold, and the visionary. The startups that succeed often champion those crazy ideas initially dismissed by the mainstream, leveraging new technologies or business models like viral marketing or hosted services to overturn established industries. As we've seen time and again, the most important companies 25 years from now will likely be ones that don't even exist today, born from insights or technologies currently germinating in labs, garages, or university dorm rooms around the world. And for the investor, navigating this landscape requires a shift in perspective. It demands looking beyond incremental improvements and seeking out technologies with the potential for nonlinear impact. It means embracing uncertainty, understanding that failure is part of the process, and valuing passionate conviction, often from a minority viewpoint, over comfortable consensus. It requires cultivating pattern recognition across diverse fields and maintaining the humility to know that the most significant breakthroughs often arise from unexpected quarters. And for everyone, students, engineers, artists, policymakers, citizens, this era demands lifelong learning and cognitive agility. The specific skills valued today may become obsolete tomorrow. What endures is the ability to learn, to adapt, to think critically across disciplines, and to embrace novelty. Cultivating that childlike mind, marked by curiosity, playfulness, and a willingness to question assumptions, becomes not just a path to creativity, but a strategy for cognitive resilience in a world defined by change. We must resist the mental ruts of specialization and continually seek out new perspectives and challenges, recognizing that eclectic mental exercise is as vital for brain health as physical exercises for the body. The path forward isn't without challenges. The same forces driving progress also raise complex societal questions about economic inequality in winner-take-all network economies, the displacement of labor through automation, the ethical implications of rewriting the code of life or creating advanced AI, and ensuring equitable access to the benefits of technology globally. Addressing these requires not just technological innovation, but also wisdom, foresight, and new approaches to governance, education, and perhaps even our social contract. And yet, despite these hurdles, the overwhelming feeling that emerges from surveying the landscape of innovation is one of optimism. We are entering an incredible renaissance interwoven across the sciences. Individuals with good ideas are empowered as never before by low-cost tools, global connectivity, and access to knowledge. Biology is yielding its secrets, offering not just new medicines, but powerful metaphors and algorithms for building complex, resilient systems. We are developing the tools to engineer matter at the molecular level, potentially transforming manufacturing. We are venturing back into space, this time driven by sustainable commercial ambitions with the potential to make humanity a multi-planetary species. And we are building intelligence both embedded in our world and potentially exceeding our own capabilities, which could unlock solutions to problems currently intractable. This isn't a time for complacency, but it is undoubtedly a time for bold dreams and ambitious action. My hope, echoing the sentiment I've shared with graduating students, is that you skip forward on your future path with a playful curiosity. Consider your destiny on this planet as something grand. Change the world for the better. Whether through scientific discovery, entrepreneurial ventures, creative expression, or thoughtful policy, the opportunity to contribute, to innovate, to leave a lasting mark, to achieve that sublime satisfaction of symbolic immortality has never been greater. The future is not something that passively happens to us. It is something we actively forge
through our choices, our ingenuity, and our collective will. Let us embrace the challenge and the adventure that lies ahead.